Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And funny story, you know how I wrecked my ankle a few weeks ago on the way to the shops and was in extreme pain over it? Well, on the way back from the shops tonight, I actually fucked up the other ankle. So, yeah. I'm just having a wonderful ankle month here.
Well, welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
In a way that it makes it look like, oh, those Jews aren't all of these horrible things, that they're going to find a way to make us those horrible things. Okay?
Except the point is that it's not, it's, as she herself just pointed out, they've lost a lot of the Jewish community at this point. Like, I mean, like my generation of the Jewish community in the U.S., and younger, have more or less already sort of cut ourselves off psychologically from this regime, because a lot of us came up starting to hear, at the time when it was first really starting to be somewhat mainstream to say, wait a second, maybe there's some human rights shit going on that we need to be paying attention to. I mean, that was what actually first made me sort of move away from the sort of Zionism I had been steeped in growing up, which was this very kind of watered down, feel-good sort of bullshit Zionism, not like the hardcore Likud stuff. But, I remember I was already extremely critical of lots of things. I had, grown up studying history independently and realized I was being fed a line of crap on all sorts of different things. Hadn't really questioned anything to do with Israel because I just hadn't come across anything that made me think about it. And I was reading Zed magazine, which I don't know if it's still around. But there was an article with something like human rights in Israel, and it's like, wait, so there's a human rights problem in Israel? I had no idea. I was like 19, 20 at the time, and I read it, and it's like, holy fuck, yes, there is. It's actually kind of fucked up. And, and my response every time I have, come across something that leads me to doubt some, crap that I'd been handed and sort of accepted reflexively in the absence of anything contradicting it, was to sort of delve in and really get stuck into it and try to understand it. And that process had me, emerge not in fairly short order as a straight up anti-Zionist.
So, there's a narrative that has pervaded, it, kind of goes and comes and goes, waves and troughs. But I think that civilization generally and society generally prefers to see us as demons.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just a thought. If you don't want Jews to be seen as demons, then let me just propose two little solutions. One is, when you do like horrible, demonic, fucked up shit, don't claim to be speaking in our name. Don't wrap that in the fucking Magen David and the menorah and all this shit. Don't claim to, don't put that shit on us. Don't leave it at our doorstep and say we had anything to do with it. That's the one possibility. Then there's another option. This is an extreme one. Just to be clear, maybe don't do fucked up demonic shit. Like, maybe just don't do that shit. Maybe the reason that people don't like, don't like your shitty ass regime is that it's constantly doing fucked up shit.
So now we're living in a post-colonial world, so we're the colonialists.
Well, you are the fucking colonialists.
Really embarrass us?
Yeah.
And so extreme
Yeah, like you did. You really embarrassed him.
voices that, of course, the press is just waiting for these morons to trip up. And so we
No
need
comment.
to take this seriously. And I want to actually give a shout out to the tech community. And I know that...
Okay, hang on a second. I have to find this. Since she just talking about all these jabronis who don't know how to do propaganda well and get embarrassed. Here we go.
If a ceasefire means the return of the hostages and the dismantlement of a genocidal regime that has stated that they're going to attack us again, then everybody would be in favor of a ceasefire. But if a ceasefire means that we're just going to keep them quiet for a bit until they attack again, then it's Israel's obligation to defend its citizens and destroy that threat, don't you think?
Why is it necessary, it is reported, to start shooting, having snipers outside a church?
I saw the reports this morning. The church, there are no churches in Gaza, so I'm not quite sure where the report is talking about.
There's a Catholic church in there, isn't there? That is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no Christians because they would drive.
There are 700 Christians. Yeah, Israel is currently trying to reduce that number by about 700.
Driven out by.
Well, respectfully, there are Christians, because I spoke to an MP yesterday who has family members in the church who are Christians.
Well, I don't know what happened.
You see, this is, it's true. Just any fucking jabroni can get interviewed on behalf of Israel, and they just can make a complete ass of themselves.
I don't know who was attacked. I didn't see the report.
Vivian, you share my admiration for the tech community in many ways during this terrible conflict that we're in. But the tech community have gotten together and said, well, yes, we're outnumbered in terms of the public diplomacy voices on social media.
Right.
But we have ingenuity, we have creativity. Why don't we use our, startup nation salts and actually use our, startup nation salts?
Startup Nation sauce? What the hell is Startup Nation sauce? I mean, it's probably like za'atar or something like that they nicked off the Palestinians.
And away, and so I really believe that the land of Israel can speak for herself, and I think the strategy should be more delegations. And I know you
and I'm totally for that. I'm totally for that. I have to say, as an anti-Zionist, totally let Israel speak for themselves. They're doing such a wonderful job, not of showing us exactly what they fucking stand for. Showing us exactly what they stand for. They step aside. Don't try to make it palatable. Just let us get a nice, tasty whiff of the fucking air that is being breathed there right now. And like supporting a particular faction of them
in force, and they were threatening
Oh, you got any like video where they say that they are pro Hamas?
Children going to sit on Santa's lap.
No.
Where so you got video of that too, because so far we've just got a protest.
So they're out in these malls, they're targeting Zara, they're threatening shoppers, and
I mean, you've got video here. Can you show us them threatening shoppers? You're going to show us that, right? You're going to show us them doing the threatening of the shoppers.
the Santas are there, and the little kids are there, and they're bawling.
And the
Then why don't we see any of this on film? You picked this clip. If what you're saying is true, why the fuck do we not see it?
Seeing as we were talking about strong female...
What fucking planet are these people on? They're gonna pretend that what's going on at these Christmas protests against the genocide, they very carefully avoided showing footage that showed any of the, like, the placards people are holding and stuff, that is actually about... that it's a radical Islamic protest against Christianity in North America. Like, anyone, like, I mean, right. Like, even the radical Islamists who, I mean, there certainly are probably some, are saying that sounds like a really shitty idea. It sounds like you get your ass kicked doing something like that. Nobody would fucking do that. Nobody, it's not, they're trying to make this like it's a protest against Christmas? This is like, and they're saying this with a fucking straight face. And then they're talking about why does our propaganda flop like it does?
This war is the first time for me. I've been in Israel for 52 years. I've been in public diplomacy,
Another cute word for propaganda.
Speaking on behalf of the state of Israel, literally from the late 1990s, but certainly in the Second Intifada. And what can I say? I've never met overt, harsh, microaggression,
Microaggression. Oh, the microaggressions. That's the real tragedy right now. Will somebody please think of the microaggressions that the Zionists are being subjected to?
Semitism everywhere. And I say that for me, as somebody who speaks, you know, I talk to different people on TV,
victim.
And I'm always nice, and I'm the mother.
Oh, well, if she's nice and she's a mother, then, like, how can you possibly fault her for doing genocidal propaganda?
And you're sitting there, and that's okay. They have somebody that's talking from the United Nations Relief and Welfare Agency, UNRWA, from Jordan. And then they have somebody who's talking from UNICEF, either from Europe or possibly from the Gaza Strip. And then they have another journalist who's talking directly from the Gaza Strip. And then...
So her problem is that there are people providing the facts.
And they go, okay. And then they ask you the question in a harsh, negative way.
Yeah, like what? What's the question? Show me what's the fucking question? Why are you like avoiding the specifics here? Like, get into it. What's the question that they're being so negative about? Show us how you could be positive about the question.
So what do you have to say after we just showed you death, destruction, and horror in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, well, I see why it might be hard to spin that positively. So her problem, the microaggression she's complaining about, is that they didn't, like, try to put a happy face on the death and destruction that she's there to justify? Like, you could fucking retire. You don't have to be justifying the mass murderer. If you're finding it hard to justify, if you're finding that to be an uncomfortable position to be in, get on the right side of this fucking thing while you still can. Seriously.
And essentially it's framing it, here we are, we've just brought you up, and now you got to explain or describe what is unexplainable.
See, the reason she's using the term explain here is because, again, the Israeli word for Israeli propaganda for foreign audiences literally means to explain. So when they say explain, lehaspir, or is it lehispir? I'm not sure. My Hebrew, as I said, a bit rudimentary, a bit basic. But what that means is justify. So when she says it's not explainable, she's kind of like, the implication is that she can't come up with a reason why this isn't a bad thing.
Defend yourself, even though you're the victim.
The biggest change was the whole...
But the point is, you're clearly not the victim. It's easier to explain yourself when you are, because then you can say, yeah, they did some fucked up shit to me, didn't they? It was horrible. But the reason that it's hard for her to explain is that she's being called on to justify horrific shit her regime has done to them.
Overt anti-Semitism worldwide. That's not necessarily in the media.
Well, then why are, like, where's the anti-Semitism, though? Like, you literally, her example of anti-Semitism here is, you have some relief workers, you have some UN people, you have some experts, you have some journalists, and they show what's going on, which is horrible, and then they ask the person whose entire fucking job is to come on and provide some kind of a justification to do that job, and provide the official Israeli propaganda line on it. And that's the anti-Semitism, apparently. Like, to asking her to do her horrible job. And it's like, I mean, on a certain level it is, because of course one of the claims of Zionist propaganda is that they're doing this on behalf of all Jews on the planet, myself included. And that's anti-Semitic as fuck, but that's not what she's talking about. She's literally talking about people asking her to do the thing she's on air for. She's... And this is the anti-Semitism that she's experiencing. This is the fucking microaggression.
Lefties, the entire Discord and Majority Report is falling for the brain rot. I feel like the community Majority Report has a very large number of leftists in it. Bombing Yemen is just tradition at this point. Yeah, look, it's just a bit of fun,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's supposed to be a good thing, Vaush. Are you, like, not able to read the room of your self-selected audience of dickheads? Like...
Lonerbox said you were the only one with good takes on this. It's just...
That should be a fucking warning! When people whose takes suck say, wow, that guy's got a good take, that's when you are supposed to go, turn off your camera, turn off your microphone, make a pot of tea, and think about it. Because something went wrong. Because if that's who's praising your takes suck.
In my mouth. My main problem is that it won't really deter the Houthis that much. Well, that we'll see, right? Like that.
That's your problem with it? That it isn't going to deter Yemen's sanctions on Israel? That's your problem with it? Biden, if you might have seen this already, chat. Somebody pointed out, because the Houthis actually, the government of Yemen said, actually, we think this is kind of cool because we've been fighting the U.S.'s fucking puppets. It's nice to actually be in a direct confrontation with the organ grinder for a change. They were actually, like, I think the head of the government, I forget his name, said that it was actually kind of an honor. And that they were obviously not going to be fucking backing down. And by the way, leaving aside the genocide thing, leaving aside the fact that they had every right to do this and that it was a good thing they were and are doing, leaving aside all of that, if the idea is to make sure that shipping can go unmolested through the Red Sea, one thing that might actually not work very well there is to have an all-out war in the Red Sea. Because now people are definitely going to have to avoid the fucking Red Sea, because not only do they have, not only is there the possibility they'll be mistaken for an Israeli ship or something like that, but there's the possibility that the U.S., with their fucking indiscriminate approach to firepower, will just sink somebody's ship, thinking it's Yemeni, and then say, yeah, my bad. But yeah, so this person in chat is saying that, yeah, it's the thing is it won't even deter the Yemeni government from their sanctions. Like, but Biden actually had that put to him today. He's like, Somebody asked him, do you think that this is going to cause Yemen to stop sanctioning Israeli shipping? She's like, and he goes, no. And, so, they go, are you going to be continuing it? Yeah. Like, and this is not the first time that Biden has just, or a Biden official, I should say, an administration official, has just openly admitted that they're doing, at this point, the mass murder is the point of the thing. The State Department's chief ghoul. Yeah, Vaush hates the drama. Yeah, I totally buy that. Nobody hates drama like Vaush. He's just such a small bean. But so Blinken gave this interview in which he said that there is no military solution to the Palestinian resistance. At the same time as, of course, he's defending the official policy that is supposedly, we're supposed to pretend that the policy is about getting rid of the Palestinian resistance, which would be a bad thing even if that were honestly what were going on, when obviously it's not. If anybody has not actually, if anybody's capabilities have not suffered in these 100 days of just fucking carnage, it's the Palestinian resistance. They're going from strength to strength. I mean, seriously, check out the jelly beans on Electronic Intifada. Not only are their tactics just going just more and more sophisticated, more and more daring and brave and everything, their fucking production values are going up as well. I mean, so obviously this is not hurting the resistance, but fucking Blinken, absolute piece of shit that he is, says, yeah, I mean, obviously there's no military solution to the Palestinian resistance, but we're gonna keep killing them and killing Palestinians by the tens of thousands, all the same. I mean, what are you gonna do?
We don't have as much of that over here in the U.S. I mean, I'm sure there are some people like that, but there's a lot of irredentism in England. Yeah, it seems so. I guess if you live in a dying empire, you want to be anywhere but there, right? Wouldn't airstriking the Yemen risk escalating the conflict and expanding it over the region?
Well, yes, it would, actually. In fact, it doesn't risk that. It has done that. By starting a direct shooting war against Yemen, that is exactly what the U.S. has done. It doesn't risk expanding this. It has already expanded it. Because Yemen counts.
When you ask questions like that, what do you mean specifically? When you say the conflict, what are you referring to? And when you talk about it expanding over the region, what are you referring to? Conflicts aren't like magic. There's systems that sort of guide the direction these things move in.
Well, yes, and the system that is guiding the direction of the genocide in Palestine is now bombing Yemen. So you could say that the system that is guiding the conflict, the system without which the conflict would basically be impossible, is expanding the conflict quite actively.
Most of the lefties who you see online who are saying shit like, this is just the American empire, reinforcing Israel's desire to genocide, blah, blah, blah.
Which is literally what it is, Vaush. That's literally what it is. Because if the U.S. just wanted to end the sanctions, there's a very easy way to do that. You cut off Israel's weapons supply, and you ensure that there is full and unrestricted access for all humanitarian aid to Gaza. That's it. That's all they're saying. That's what they're saying is what, their off-ramp on this thing. That's all they're calling for. Do that. And, then you will know, and because you should do that anyway. You have a pre-existing legal and moral duty to do that already. So, you do that, and then you see what happens. Either they're telling the truth, that this is their motivation, which seems likely because they weren't doing this before the genocide. In which case they will just stop and, Red Sea shipping will resume as, previously. or they don't stop, which would actually be kind of surprising, because they hadn't been doing this before the genocide. They're not just itching to have a conflict with people who can, you know, raze their entire country to the ground. And then you see what's going on after that. You know, I mean, they've been very clear on this. And yeah, I mean, this is, wow, hello, I don't know nothing. Yeah, I mean, he's also admitting that he knows what is actually at stake here. Because this is very much about the U.S. starting a war against Yemen to
genocide, or at least like massively destructive behavior in Yemen. But that's not really like an endorsement of the Houthis, you know?
You don't have to endorse everything that they stand for to say that they're actually doing the right thing here. I mean, for a guy who stands U.S. imperialism all over the place while claiming that he's actually critical of it, you'd think that he was familiar with this idea. I mean, this is just the, like, reverse Caleb Maupin he's doing.
This is just the problem that we keep facing over and over and over again.
That your takes suck, and people point it out?
You know, like, the Confederates became an oppressed minority after we squashed them and engaged in reparations. Does that make any of their whining about the
What the fuck did he just say?
Like, the Confederates became an oppressed minority after we squashed them and engaged in, like, reparations. Does that make any of their...
No they fucking didn't. The oppressed minorities... Actually, I mean, you couldn't even really say minorities, because numerically, in a lot of places, they would have been the absolute majority. We're still black people and indigenous people. And he said, what did he call it? Reparation? No, it's called Reconstruction, you dickhead. And it was abandoned after like a year and a half as the fucking Klan, with the aid of the cops and the leniency of the Union troops, just terrorized black people out of exercising the rights that they had just been granted in the Constitution. That is, River Rune, that is exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about how interesting it is that in this completely different context, we once again get this idea that white supremacists are the victims. That is like, I mean, that is one of the really consistent threads, is like finding ways for white supremacists to be the victims.
Them's oppressed, all of them are oppressed, you know? Like, are black people in America oppressed? Yeah, absolutely. But if you had, like, a random serial rapist who is black running around Detroit, people, is that
wait, what?
Person in the right?
Holy shit. I mean, the dog whistles in this thing. I thought we were going to be watching him tie himself into fucking pretzels to explain why the genocide is bad, but trying to stop the genocide is bad. And instead, he's just doing a white nationalism here. He's just doing, this is his fucking Richard Spencer arc.
When the police arrest them? No, of course not. Because because that's dumb, you know? I don't know.
Well, yeah, that is one consistent thing, Vaush. You don't know, so maybe shut the fuck up.
Even if Gaza was their motivation, it wouldn't matter.
It actually does kind of matter.
International maritime trade is a no-go.
Wait, okay, that's your thing? That's your fucking red line? Not genocide, not sanctioning, not sanctioning fucking vessels that are supplying the economy of a regime that is currently starving people in Gaza to death. 80% of the people experiencing catastrophic hunger in the world right now are in Gaza. 80% in the whole fucking world. Catastrophic hunger is when you could just basically drop any minute because you've not because you were that malnourished. Like, I mean, but your fucking red line, Vaush, is international maritime trade. So what do you think happens when the U.S. starts an all-out war in the Red Sea? You think that helps maritime trade? Yeah, I mean, sounding like a fucking... Where's your... Yeah, I mean, sounding like a fucking British imperial spokesman from the Edwardian days. Now, I am willing to countenance a certain amount of mass murder in a good cause, but I really cannot stomach. I really will not abide any disruption to maritime trade. Like, I mean, what the fuck is this take?
With that, but also the fact that they've lied about which targets they're going after.
No, they haven't.
Switching between we're only blockading Israel to we're going after everyone.
No, that is not true. That is actually a lie. They have been very consistent. There was exactly one ship that they got wrong. They had outdated intel on it. But what they've said from the beginning is Israeli vessels, which is vessels registered in Israel or Israeli owned, and vessels bound for or originating from Israel. And they have abided by that.
Sort of like cast doubt upon their sincerity. Also, the fact the Houthis historically have not really done much to like help Palestinians.
You mean because historically they were busy getting wrecked by Saudi Arabia? So you're saying like the fact that they have not actually... Yeah, I mean, historically, the Houthis have not actually been in power for very long, actually. And a lot of that time, they've had a lot of problems that they were dealing with the U.S. and Saudi Arabia trying to starve Yemen to death. So, yeah. This is, like, the one thing... And, again, the fact that, what else are they going to do? What they've got is the position, they're in a position to bottleneck the Red Sea. That's what they can do. So, I mean, they are barely surviving as it is. It's not like they can organize a fucking whip round. It's the poorest country in the region. They've been systematically starved out. They're barely managing on their own. Like, what else are they going to do? And also, I mean, like, seriously, what else would they be doing? And this did not actually start until after the genocide had been going on for a fair while.
Like they're both in a diplomatic and like real politic level. They haven't really engaged that much.
I wonder why. Could they have had other things to do?
Taking advantage of the situation in Gaza as a pretext, like they're using it as an excuse to bolster their cred, essentially. I don't know, man.
Like, this is what you've decided to condemn. Not the fact that the U.S. has openly said, yeah, that there's no, they don't actually believe their own rationale for the genocide, but they're going to continue doing it. Not the fact that Israel has said that no matter what the International Court of Justice does, they're going to continue this genocide. Not the fact that they have now destroyed the last hospital in Gaza, the last university in Gaza. But what you're condemning is sanctions on Israel. Like, what the fuck? What should they do, Vaush? What would you be okay with them doing as somebody whose governability is a sine qua non of the U.S. being able to carry out this genocide? Like, literally, all of us who are sitting here in the U.S., the only reason that this shit can happen is that the U.S. is not busy putting out fucking fires here. Our governability is what makes this possible. And as somebody with a platform, like, he is in a position to influence that a bit. And he influences this in the direction of, like, fucking apologetics for U.S. genocide. I didn't even notice I said something funny. What was the bit that was funny?
I have what some may consider a dumb idea, but here it is. Stop the bombing of Gaza and the attacks and commercial shipping will end. Why not try that approach?
Yeah, why not? Let's hear it, Vaush. Why not?
Can you imagine if there was an injustice happening and then somewhere else in the world somebody like robbed a bank, fired guns at a bunch of people, but like miraculously didn't hit them, and they were like, yeah, if you want us to not rob banks, why don't you stop that other crisis? going to stop the crisis in Gaza, which they're not because America's evil, then at the very least we can stop the bank robbery, right? Like, just because...
What? What the... Well, maybe we cannot stop the genocide that the U.S. is committing, but at least we can stop the sanctions against Israel that are intended to disrupt the genocide. This is what this motherfucker just said. Back.
Like, why? Why would I do that? Why wouldn't I stop both things? And if America isn't going to stop the crisis in Gaza, which they're not...
The crisis. It's been downgraded to the crisis.
Evil, then at the very least we can stop the bank robbery, right? Like, just because the crisis isn't going to be stopped doesn't mean
The crisis. Fuck you, man. The crisis.
I don't want the bank robbery to be stopped. Like, that's...
like, what's the crisis, Vaush? Could you tell us a little bit about the crisis? Did they have an earthquake, maybe? Was it a tsunami? What's the crisis, Vaush?
Not... That you know, you can, like, you can still want that. I don't have to accept the existence of a bad thing just because another bad thing exists, you know? I don't have to...
That's like, not the point, you absolute fucking drongo. The sanctions, which to him are a bad thing, because, I mean, there's nothing matters to Vaush more than, like, the shipping lanes, because, again, he is a 19th century British Foreign Office bureaucrat, apparently, in this timeline. So the sanctions are a bad thing, and the genocide is a bad thing. So bad that it dare not speak its name, at least in Vaush's stream. So why wouldn't I just do something about the one? Well, why?
Them to do a bad thing, you know? You can argue hypocrisy, and you should. Hypocrisy is...
Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. Yeah, it's hard to actually argue hypocrisy with him, because you have to actually figure out what the fucking standard he is applying here is in order to determine whether he is actually holding up to that standard. And he doesn't seem to have a standard, apart from America good. Like, when America do genocide, that good thing. When Arab do resistance to genocide, that bad thing.
That's valid. But at no point do you have to throw your hands up and go, well, like, that would be like if you had a bunch of white cops in a racist city, right? A city that had a long history of...
Oh, this is going to go well. I'm sure that there's not going to be anything problematic forthcoming now. We got a good take incoming.
Oppressing black people, and like the cops tend to be really like partial, like they tend to let white criminals go but not black criminals, and then a black guy starts like a bunch of kids or whatever, and then it, like the cops go in, you're like, oh wow,
what is this Willie Horton bullshit? Fucking Vaush Limbaugh here.
Well, why don't you go after the other things? It's like, okay, well, yeah, the cops should go after other stuff as well. I agree. There should be, like, more equality. But you don't solve that by, like, letting...
This isn't about more equality. The U.S. is doing genocide in the Middle East, in Gaza, having also done genocide against Yemen. Yemen is trying to stop that genocide. Like, this isn't about equality. This is the U.S. should stop doing genocide if they want people to stop resisting the U.S. doing genocide.
The just get away. You know, that's just not... It's like the systemic critique of the behavior of the police...
This isn't the systemic critique,
while also believing that in this instance, whether it be by partiality or impartiality, this invocation of the law is justified.
But this isn't an invocation of the law. You're literally arguing against it. Because if you invoke the law says the U.S. isn't allowed to do this. The law actually says that what the U.S. is doing is a capital offense. Actually. The law says that all states have a duty to prevent genocide. A duty that basically nobody is taking on, it's worth noting, except for Yemen at the moment. Because the U.S. is in a position to thwart any attempt at international legal accountability. They do it all the time. It's why the file at the International Criminal Court has been gathering dust for years. So this is not the systemic critique. I mean, and in fact, I haven't heard Vaush make a systemic critique here. This is, quite simply, the U.S. should not be doing this. The U.S. should not be bombing Yemen, and the U.S. should not be genociding Palestinians. Like, why shouldn't we be saying that the U.S. should not be doing either of those things? I mean, like, legally, they really shouldn't, because if we're invoking the law, because apparently, I mean, the only thing that Vaush likes more than international maritime trade is the fucking law. The law says that the U.S. has to exhaust peaceful means, which in this case means ending the genocide. End the genocide and see if the sanctions end. That's it. If they don't end, then there's another then that's another situation. But there's every reason to believe they will end, and there's every reason to believe that the U.S. also believes they would end, because if the U.S. thought that they weren't serious, the best way to fucking call their bluff would be to end the genocide and see what happens. That's how when you want to know whether an offer is serious, you accept it. Because if you don't think that they're actually going to follow through on that offer, then you will find that out.
Of course. But what do you think making trade more expensive means?
Well, it might mean putting a price tag on genocide in this case. And here's the thing. This is where he really falls. I mean, he falls apart in so many different ways that it's actually, like, I don't even know where all the bits of him are lying. But he can't decide whether this is destroying international trade or totally ineffectual. It is either of these things, depending on which one he can use best in a particular rhetorical situation to justify the U.S. Committing acts of aggression against Yemen.
I think 10 extra days is an incredibly big deal. What Houthis have done is make international shipping more expensive, and that's why the whole world is fine with murking them? Yes.
Except the whole world is not. I mean, the whole world in this case is the U.S. and Israel.
Of course. But what do you think making trade more expensive means?
Well, it might mean putting a price tag on genocide in this case. And here's the thing. This is where he really falls. I mean, he falls apart in so many different ways that it's actually, like, I don't even know where all the bits of him are lying. But he can't decide whether this is destroying international trade or totally ineffectual. It is either of these things, depending on which one he can use best in a particular rhetorical situation to justify the U.S. Committing acts of aggression against Yemen.
Means it takes more time and human effort, which means that it's harder to do, which lowers the efficiency of trade, which means that the speed
Who gives
of,
a shit?
Shipping vessels, like circulating their whole route, takes significantly longer, which means...
Like, 80% of all people facing catastrophic hunger are in Gaza. People are already dropping dead of hunger in Gaza. They're eating fucking grass and tree leaves just to have something. If even a little bit of food is found, you got 1,000 people showing up trying to get a little bit of it just to have something in their stomachs. Israel, wonderful, just courageous soldiers that they have there, who, they can't handle a bunch of young guys in tracksuits with homemade weapons. But they do have the wherewithal to open fire and just gun down huge numbers of people who are just trying to get some fucking food. And this motherfucker is here, worried about the fact that, that a boat will take longer to reach Israel.
Means that fewer deliveries can be made. Making things take longer, making them more expensive is a threat, Again, you might get your Funko...
Killing 2 million people is a threat too, Vaush. I think you'll find.
Pops 10 days later, and the shipping might take a little bit more, whatever. But there are people who rely on medicine and grain. And
to name two things that Palestinians don't have access to in Gaza. God, I mean, this guy must have, like, some sort of, like, shisha set up, except that he farts into it, because he wants to smell the gas out of his own ass. I mean, look at how fucking proud of himself is. He's found a way to justify genocide without ever even approaching argumentative coherence.
To his credit, he still has me on the air to lead anchor when I'm on with him.
That is not to his credit. That is to his fucking debit. Okay, that is to his absolute fucking debit.
Frame the story as I like, present it as I like, and then he just yells at me and says I'm wrong.
Wait, yeah, that's even worse. Wait, why are you, I mean, shit. I thought my opinion of Cenk had bottomed out already. Letting him frame the narrative? Like, why the fuck would you let him frame the narrative? He's just gonna be full of shit. They let the fucking facts It's not like we have a shortage of evidence of what's going on. We are absolutely inundated with fucking footage of what's going on, and a lot of the worst of it is shot by the Israeli goons themselves. Why let this motherfucker... There's literally no justification for letting this motherfucker frame anything.
Media, I could quit the network on protest stance on this and then just talk to people who already agree with me, or I can stay on this network and have more and more people hate me every time I go on the air. But I'm just spitballing here, but there's a third option, and there's maybe, instead of disgusting every single person who watches you with your fucking ghoulish stance in support of a genocide that's going on in front of everybody's eyes, maybe you could not do that. Maybe you could just have a moment where you say, wow, that's actually really fucked up. Like, even Wolf fucking Blitzer, one of the most pro-Israel motherfuckers on TV, had a moment there when, like, the really big attack on, I believe it was Jabalia, where Israel's claim was that they were going to kill like 500 people in order to get one guy who wasn't there. And even he had a moment where he did like a double take, like, what the fuck? I never heard of this guy, actually. I don't watch the Young Turks that much because I just don't see why. I mean, if I want to, like, hit myself in the head with something, I got a concrete ball. I mean, I don't need the Young Turks in order to cause pain. And I've already seen some shift in the...
I mean, like, watching this is painful enough. Let's be...
It's not a genocide when the people who attacked you are the ones who literally are intending and trying over and over again to commit a genocide.
Which is just a lie. And it's worth noting, it's not even a novel lie. A lot of people, because, I mean, the way that a lot of this stuff gets taught in history class, they don't really show you the sort of justifications that the people who commit huge atrocities actually used in order to sell the stuff to the people who they were giving the order to do the shit. Like, for example, most people don't realize, I think, that the line that was given to the SS goons who were carrying out genocide in Europe under Nazi rule was specifically this line. It was literally, like, the claim that they, the line that was being held is that, we have to kill them because they want to exterminate us. Like, that was the line, that it's us or them, and all this sort of shit. This is nothing new. This idea of, I know you are, but what am I-ing genocide, that is old school. Okay?
I could have said this and I should have done that, but that facial expression does not look good at my age. Anyway.
No, I mostly watch it back just to see how good I look.
You don't.
You're a very handsome man.
And
Thank you very
I'm
much.
single, ladies.
That's
Single.
right. True
I'm in
that.
Tel Aviv. Not this trip, but on the next trip.
Not
We're going to
this
be
trip,
focusing
correct.
on finding a
That's
wife.
right. Thank you.
Oh God, yes, because because they've got to increase the birth rate. This is like an obsession in Israel because the Palestinians they birth rate is too high, and it's the demographic bomb they call it. But they're not genocidal or anything. They just think it's a bad thing that members of a defined ethnic group are having children.
Thank you so much. Every time you say someone says that, it doesn't work out well, but DMs are open.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine fucking that guy.
Ben, one question I have a lot of. He's Turkish, right?
Yeah.
Is he?
Of course, this room full of like fucking racist propagandists are immediately gonna go, oh well, check out his ethnicity though.
Erdogan mouthpiece.
No, he's a fucking Biden mouthpiece. Where the hell are you from? Oh, she's from London. That's right.
Young Turks.
They don't understand, like, whatever.
Yes, but my question is, if he isn't a mouthpiece of Erdogan, does he oppose Erdogan? Is he a groupie of Erdogan?
Wait, okay. One of the things Zionists love to act like, it's like they will freak out at the idea that anyone is curious about, like, an Israeli's stance on the genocide. But, you know, he's Turkish, so therefore we must know exactly what he thinks of Erdogan. Normal people.
He's on the same side. How do you? What does he think about it?
I don't know the answer. I don't think we've ever discussed it on air when I've been on. And so, yeah, maybe I'll bring it up.
Well, let's bring you to the quad. So
he would be happy.
Oh God. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait, they want to do a proper crossover with the Young Turks? Okay, that sounds horrible. First of all, that sounds like absolutely fucking horrifying. On the other hand, fucking hell, I would have to do that on stream. If they do that, I would like be contractually obliged by like the non-existent hypothetical contract that I just made up in my head to do that, because that just sounds like such an amazing fucking car crash. Yeah, it is exactly the sort of horror story that we would absolutely have to watch. Because, I mean, that is my content. I watch awful shit and I blow my stack. Slowly sometimes quickly. But, I mean, that's what I do here, basically. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. But, and this is one of the things that really... I wrote about this a little bit on Facebook, and I think maybe I also put it on Twitter. But one of the things that really gets me about this particular moment in U.S. history is that the way consent is being manufactured for fascism, for authoritarianism, is by pretending that it's only coming from one sector of the political class, or maybe just one guy, just one fucking guy, is the whole threat. And so everybody's, and they're not wrong that he is, like, at the very least, seriously fascist adjacent, happy to share the company of fascists, serious reactionary authoritarian, fuck, all those things. He's a piece of shit. I mean, no actual argument there. But the thing is that when you're looking over at him, you're missing, like, half of the problem. Because the movement towards, like, authoritarian rule in this country has been bipartisan. It has been a consensus. You can look, I mean, every year it gets worse. Every year, I mean, like, some of the worst anti-immigrant laws were passed in the 1990s. Some of the worst laws to make it, like, possible to execute people without them ever having a chance to get a proper appeal hearing in this country, those were passed in the 90s. By Democrats, with the support of Democrats. Bill Clinton fucking loved this shit. And it's just gotten worse. With Bush, it got worse. None of that stuff got reversed under Obama. None of the Bush stuff got reversed. We still have concentration camps, and not just the immigration ones that everybody talks about when Joe Biden isn't in charge of them. But, you know, Guantanamo is still open. There are still abductees, still hostages in Guantanamo. We don't know exactly how many other of these camps are being operated because the only one that anyone knows about is Guantanamo. Everything else is classified. Obama says, oh, well, he closed all of the so-called black sites. But the thing about the black sites, of course, is that nobody, not even the Red Cross, ever had access to them. So you can say that, and there's no way to verify it. So that stuff is still, like, going on. It has gotten worse every single year. You know, and when you have, like, now the discourse, the political discourse, the mainstream discourse is all this, like, conspiracy shit about how anyone to your left is, they've got to be some sort of an op. You know, like, I mean, Nancy Pelosi can't decide whether 80% of the people who's, hello, Phoenix, bonjour, hello, Phoenix, she can't decide whether 80% of the people who have any likelihood of ever voting for Democrats are under the control of Russia or under the control of China. Like, that is fascist discourse right there. This sort of outside agitator bullshit. Like, authoritarianism, the threat to what, you can't even say, like, the threat to democracy because the U.S. has never really gotten that close to democracy. This has always been a remarkably authoritarian society that does not give very much at all meaningful opportunity to for the population to participate in any kind of important decisions. I mean, I would actually say, there are plenty of countries, many of them, basically all of them, not what I would consider myself to be fighting for, that at the very least are no more, could not be said to be more authoritarian than the U.S., and in some respects could be said to be less. Like that Families Code in Cuba that they enacted, the one that got rid of the nuclear family as the template of what a family is. I mean, people, there were massive debates, there was a whole huge public comment session, and it was passed by referendum. That's a level of influence over, like, over policy decisions that people in this country can only really dream of.
That's a fair point, but whoever is putting the prompter speeches in Biden's sunglasses is generally doing the right thing for Israel at this moment.
And what gets me about this is just how absolutely short-term this view is. Because this is not conducive to the long-term survival of the regime. Letting these pricks show what they're capable of, at the same time as they also show what they're incapable of, i.e. actually making any kind of a showing against, like, real soldiers. And I'm not saying real soldiers in any kind of moralizing sense here. Like, yeah, plenty of real soldiers commit huge atrocities. What I'm saying is that they also know how to fight. And Israel's military, that eludes them, because they've never needed it. They have, like, their use case there is, like, terrorizing little kids and old people. So, like, when they're actually facing any kind of a trained, organized, disciplined fighting force, they look like a bunch of wallies. That's not going to be good for them in the long run.
Yeah. But obviously the counter argument is that people think once you weigh into that side, they don't see it as, they agree it's horrible, they don't see it as bad as people losing their lives constantly every day, and so...
Okay. This will be interesting, because that is, like, the closest thing these people have ever had to pushback. To at least acknowledge that actually, tens of thousands of people are being murdered. Yeah, I mean, Israel responded to the ICJ's ruling that ordered them to immediately stop killing people by almost breaking a record for the number of people killed in 24 hours, like 487 people.
Did he Me Too her?
She says he was very respectful to her, that he was hitting on everybody else, but not...
Wait, did he Me Too her? Okay, wait a second here. She was just talking about all of this crap about what supposedly Palestinians had done on October 7th with no evidence, and how horrible that was. And he just sort of she just casually just asked Ben here, "Did Moshe Dayan sexually assault your mom?" Just casually, I mean, that was like one of his endearing things. What? Wow.
The girls in his office, so that's at least impressive. That's because they always stood to his left, so he did not see it.
Wait. Okay, so this is why they have trouble understanding a principled stance, because they can't even have a principled stance on whether sexual assault bad. If Moshe Dayan does it, apparently it's cute. Like the whole dynamic on this show is just yuck. It is just like profound yuck. Every single bit of it. The snideness, the fact that she can go from talking about how horrible sexual assault is when it's fictional, to going, "Oh, did Moshe Dayan Me Too your mother?" and that's a funny joke. I mean, there is just a level of vileness that is like painful, actually, to look at. The oil slick that killed Tasha Yar every couple of years gets to coalesce into, like, human form, and it does episodes of this fucking show. Oh god, that was rough.
For a few years, and I was never kind of exposed to that. We know about our evangelical friends in the U.S.
Our evangelical friends. Like, I mean, let's just remember, again, and I'm going to point this out particularly, since evangelical Christians aren't so much of a thing in Britain, let me just say, evangelical Christians fucking hate Jews. They are open about it. Like, the reason a lot of them support Israel, and they will tell you this, is that they want to dump us all there, so that, because the only way Jesus can come back and give one of his patented speeches on loving thy neighbor is if they massacre us all first. Israel, for them, is Theresienstadt. That's how they see Israel. They do not like us. They are not our friends. But, I mean, if there's one thing Zionism has a long history of, it's cozying up to people who are not our friends.
Pray for the IDF, we pray for victory over the success of Israel. We want for protection.
Oh, that's very interesting. What was she about to say that she thought the better of? What was the victory that she felt she had to kind of avoid saying, I wonder?
Where does it come from to be this pro-Israel in your community?
Anti-Semitism.
30% were Catholic. So it's generally a Christian nation. And Christians don't realize that. Because, you know, we like to think...
Now, how the fuck do they... What do you mean they don't realize that? Fuck off. What fucking religion did you think they were? Exactly. What religion... What, did you think they were all Buddhists? Maybe they were Baha'i. Maybe Germany was a Baha'i nation or something like that. What fucking religion did you think they were? Like, wait, what the fuck is this? They didn't know. Yeah, they didn't know. Who could have thought? Who could have thought that Germany in the mid-20th century was a Christian country? Okay, that moved way away from New Zealand and ended up in Queensland. But there you are.
We love it. We love your heritage in that side of things is appalling. It's so awful. We often have people, when we give our message, getting on their knees and repenting.
Yeah, and I have absolutely no belief in that, because if they're gonna act like they're surprised that that Germany was an overwhelmingly Christian country when it was doing the Holocaust, it still is now. People like this would probably have you believe it's a literal caliphate or something. But it still is, overwhelmingly. Except that it's, like, largely, like, agnostics and atheists of Christian background these days. But it's still illegal in Germany to show the life of Brian on Easter. You literally can't show it. The streaming services in Germany cannot show it to you. It's fucked up. The churches have all sorts of fucking privileges under the Constitution there. Like, they don't have to follow labor laws. But, I mean, if anyone is acting like they're surprised to hear that Germany was Christian in the 1940s, I call bullshit. Okay?
And saying, we never knew, this is terrible. I cannot believe we've done this to the Jewish people.
What the fuck do you mean you can't believe? What the fuck do you mean you can't believe? Like, what the fuck is this shit? And, I mean, and see, this is where we're talking about, like, how Zionism enables anti-Semites, too. Because, like, what she's saying here is just wild bullshit. This is, like, I mean... like, nobody buys this stuff when, like, Germans after the war would be like, oh, we had no idea what was going on. But, when she says that, Christians had no idea that Nazi Germany was mostly Christians and Hitler was Catholic, and the Crusades actually were fucked up. Like, the entire history of European Christianity. Everybody's, like, acting like, oh, well, of course, how could you possibly know that your entire history has been, like, torturing Jews? Because we were in Europe before they were. Actually, before Christianity was in Europe, Jews already had towns in Northern Europe. The oldest Jewish town that is known to archaeology is outside Cologne in northwestern Germany, and is like 2,000 years old. Literally, it is pre-Christian. It is very much pre-Christianity getting to Europe. Like, literally, the entire history of Christianity in Europe has been fucking with us. And we're supposed to believe, oh, they were shocked to hear this. Like, we've been telling them for a long time, actually.
Yes. It doesn't make sense. So the way, I think, being a reverend, I see it as a spiritual. It's spiritual because it doesn't make sense. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Wait.
That's a very interesting way to look at it.
Wait, so being a reverend, she thinks if it's spiritual, it doesn't make sense? If it doesn't make sense, it's spiritual? Like, okay, I wouldn't have thought that you'd hear a reverend saying that. I thought reverends were supposed to be telling you that spiritual shit does make sense? But okay.
Generation, they are subject to genocide, and the irony is
that in every generation they rise up against us.
That's right.
Wait, in every generation we're subject to genocide? Like, okay, I've lived through a couple of generations now, and I'm Jewish. I haven't seen it. I mean, the closest thing I've seen to anything like that, actually, is the combination of, like, neo-Nazis who actually are fans of shit like Breitbart, which is linked to this show, and Christian Zionists. Those are, like, the two people that have show any interest in trying it on, and wouldn't you know it, Israel loves them.
It's been built in the re-establishment of Israel in 75 years, or 80 years. It's incredible. This country is amazing, and there is such grace. And one thing
one thing you see on Israeli military TikTok, the thing that's really striking is the grace. Like, it is so fucking graceful. I mean, like, the guy who stole those people's parrot and thinks it's funny to joke about murdering the parrot and to film himself doing it, and the guys who film themselves taking a shit in some people's fucking living room. I mean, the grace is just overwhelming. It is amazing grace. I mean, just such fucking graceful regime.
It's been so deeply painful to watch.
Yeah, none of us have slept for 3 months. Yeah.
I fucking, my heart goes out. I mean, you can't see it, chat, because my camera resolution isn't good enough. But if you zoomed in using military grade optics, you could see the smallest violin in the world on my shoulder, playing a funereal melody of Hatikva for the fucking loss of sleep these ghouls have had.
They share their traditions. They've shared their Torah with us, the Tanakh.
No, you didn't. We didn't share shit with you. You just decided to appropriate stuff.
What is the negative impact of steelwork?
We do get that. I mean, we get called genocide supporters.
Oh God, my heart goes out to you. Like, maybe don't support genocide, and take that fucking star off your neck. I mean, they need to take the fucking star off their flag, but she has even less right than they.
We stay with the truth. We stay with the biblical foundation of the truth of what Israel is. The Jewish people are a blessing to the nations, and they are punching well above their weight in terms of Nobel Peace Prizes, startup companies. You know what they
like. Who gives a shit? Okay, fuck off. Actually, this is what you got. You're like. Yeah, the idea is that startup fucking companies and Nobel Peace Prize. This is what you. What a fucking worldview. Jesus fuck. I mean, and look at the fucking fervor in her eyes now. She is swinging into high here. She thinks this is her A material. Like, oh wow, like. Look at, I mean, like, she's literally just said that we punch above our weight at making money. Like, that isn't an anti-Semitic fucking stereotype to begin with. Yeah, maybe she needs to work on herself. I wrote an entire thing, actually. I wrote a thing. I'm gonna just pull it up. Helpful. Here we go. Dropping the link in chat. It's called Helpful Hints for Zionists. How to Advocate for Israel Without Being Anti-Semitic. Because it is a real problem, I've noticed, among Zionists, is that they can't seem to advocate for Zionism without shitting on Jews.
Given to the world, we couldn't do without. Yeah, we couldn't do without. And we don't actually care. You know, it's fine, let them come. But our stance is, you know, your God is our God, your people are our people. Oh?
No. Like, the level of cultural appropriation going on, this is just creepy as hell. This reminds me of, like, an experience, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Where in Germany, when people find out you're Jewish, they will say, I love the Jews. And it's like, I mean, it's like you want to make like a Yiddish reboot of Get Out. When you hear that, I mean, and it's like, okay, edging away, finding the nearest exit, they love the Jews. Like, there are Jews in my family I don't think that highly of, and they're convinced they love all 14 million of us. Like, yeah, find the fire escape, just edge out, don't say goodbye to anyone, because then you might get caught up, and get the fuck out.
And we stand with you, and if they come for the Jewish people, they have
Who's
to
they?
go to us first, which is why I wear the Star of David, and why many in my husband.
Yeah, and like, if anyone ever really came for us, she would be tearing that shit off faster than anybody. That thing would disappear in a heartbeat if, you know, if it ever actually became that dangerous for us again.
And we thank you for the upbringing that your mother gave you and for your advocacy Look, I wish Jews felt as clear in their conviction as you feel.
Oh, well, yeah, it's interesting that she admits that actually Jews don't feel as enthusiastic about this as Christian Zionists do, and, you do have to kind of wonder why that might be. Time for some Xanderhal. I mean, everyone knows the origin story, I'm sure. One day, a few years ago, Vaush was having a colonoscopy, and they found a small abnormality in the sigmoid. And they resected it and took it out and sent it to pathology. The pathologists and the lab techs were absolutely gobsmacked because it started to grow. It started to grow and grow and grow, and one day it took a mic in hand. Hello and welcome, hola y bienvenide al canal Gaviota Brava, to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where we're going to be doing, this is going to be a bit more of a bilingual stream than we usually do, porque tenemos la media noticia, se murió el segundo Pinochet. Sebastián Piñera, former Chilean dictator and one of the most hated people in the country, has died, which basically only happened because he'd be alive right now if the current government had followed up on their promises to prosecute him for all the atrocities he'd committed during his last time in government. But they let him get off scot-free, and impunity, it turns out, is not good for you. I'm just going to show you a sampling of what popular opinion in Chile is of this guy. This is not right now. This is from during the uprising a couple of years ago. Conche tu madre, asesino, igual que Pinochet. They're singing, "Fuck you, Piñera, you're a murderer just like Pinochet." And if you Google, if you search this in YouTube, Piñera conche tu madre, asesino igual que Pinochet, you will find video of large crowds all over the country, full stadiums, singing this, all up and down. It was such a fucking hit song. It has its own, melody. Look, they're playing, they got instrumental accompaniment here. They got brass, because Piñera is a national hate figure. And for the benefit of people who don't know Chile, which is, I would imagine, a lot of people in chat, because outside of Chile, the recording in English in particular is absolutely terrible. I'm just gonna introduce people, first of all, just to a little bit about who this fucking guy is. Or was, because now he's a past tense asshole now. Okay, so his first big thing, he comes from a rich-ass family, and that includes, his brothers include a shitty musician by the name of Negro Piñera, hi Riveroon, a University of Chicago economist who is responsible to a great extent for just how shitty things are in Chile, José Piñera, and then there's him, Sebastián. And Sebastián, his big thing, before he really got into politics, see, in the early 80s, Pinochet had the idea, thanks to Sebastián's brother and a bunch of other Chicago boys, had the idea of privatizing and deregulating the banking system. And Sebastian realized that you could, this was the perfect time if you wanted to pull off an embezzlement scheme, screw lots of people out of their savings, and walk away with a shit ton of cash. This would be a great time to do it. And indeed, it was. He embezzled a bunch of money from the Banco de Talca in the sort of southern central region of the country. And he was almost sent to prison for it, except that the dictatorship's Minister of Justice, Mónica Madariaga, interceded personally for him. This is basically how he made his money. I mean, he came from money. That's important to keep in mind. It's not like he came from nothing and then, you know, managed to make a whole bunch of money through the hard graft of embezzling money from the Banco de Talca. But so he made his money profiting off of the dictatorship, in which his brother was a leading economic advisor. I mean, nothing untoward there. Then he becomes, and he ends up owning LAN-Chile, the main national flagship airline, where he was a really nasty union buster. Also Chilevisión, one of the major television networks, which you'll be surprised to hear it did not exactly have sort of a nuanced view of him when he died. And so he was known for the brutal repression of the student movement back the first time he was president, back about 13 years ago, more or less. And you know, then he left office in just absolute disgrace after that. But because the ruling class in Chile, just like in the U.S., they've run out of ideas for the most part. And so they just kind of dish up reruns. And so he ended up standing for the presidency again. And he ended up in office starting in 2018. And in 2019, well, no, he got elected in 2018, I think it was. Let me just make absolutely sure. No, 2017. So, okay. And he came in and he was basically doing the usual thing, which is to give huge money, you know, basically gift estate assets to his mates, as he did. But, you know, at the same time, somebody's got to pay for all those gifts to Piñera's mates and cousins and people. Like, I mean, he had, like, the thing about Chilean politics is, like, everybody's somebody's fucking cousin. Like, I mean, the surnames don't change from one generation to the next because it's just, like, the sons and daughters of the people who were in those seats in the parliament a couple of years ago. I mean, the level of nepotism is impressive. It would embarrass the British royal family. But anyway, like, his cousin was Home Secretary. So there's this decision to raise the metro fare in Santiago by 30 pesos. Not a lot of money in the scheme of things, but a lot of money if you're living on the sort of incomes you can live on in Chile, which are like way less than $1,000 a month. And don't think that it's like a lot of places where, yeah, the wages are really low, but the prices are actually also low on a lot of things. No. Like, I can tell you, having spent time in Chile, that actually a lot of really basic stuff, like food and things like that, costs about the same as it does in the US and Western Europe. Yeah, except that most people don't make anywhere near as much. So people literally are going into debt. Like, when you buy shit with a card at the supermarket, the first thing you have to answer, it will ask you how many installments you want to pay it in. People are literally buying fucking food on installment plan. So that is okay, so there's this, like, secondary students who have been absolutely the backbone of every uprising in this whole cycle of escalating mobilizations in Chile over the past decade, even longer. They kick off. and they start a mass fare evasion campaign, start dodging fares and stuff like that. Piñera then sort of cracks down, and the entire fucking country, after like these attacks on the secondary students in their fare evasion campaign, just already rises up. I mean, just absolutely nobody was having it. And that's when Piñera manages to go from a normal bent asshole president of Chile to being a historically bloodthirsty asshole. Like, because in the last 2 years he was in office, the number of extrajudicial executions, actually on a month-on-month basis, exceeded the last decade of Pinochet's rule. The same with cases of torture and things like that. I mean, it started out like Piñera goes, okay, so the multiple metro stations burn it. And nobody takes responsibility for this. There's like nobody's knows who did it. Everybody's kind of looking someplace else. This isn't like what happened with the uprising in 2020, where like a community went and actually just took out the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis. This is a fucking mystery on a certain level, though in general it is widely believed that probably it was Piñera. Amongst other things, not him personally, but somebody on his behalf. Amongst other things, the thing to know about these metro stations is they were surrounded, utterly just full of military police at the time. The Metro Workers Union points this out. Not only that, so they, the thing is, underground stations are actually kind of hard to burn down. Because they're underground, they don't have a whole lot of air. That makes it really difficult for a fire to actually stay lit. So, then, a prosecutor is in charge of the investigation and actually says, this looks like a professional job. This was not done from outside the station. This wasn't somebody, like, chucking a petrol bomb in and it just went off. This was done by somebody who had a very clear knowledge of the layout of the station. The fires originated in restricted areas, and they required a substantial amount of accelerant to even get started. Much more than anybody would be just able to carry on their person inconspicuously. And all this happened while these things were full of military police. Not only that, there are films. There's mobile footage people shot of military police running out of these stations shortly before smoke starts pouring out of them. Like, so, I mean, there are serious question marks around that. But he uses this as an excuse to declare a state of emergency, which, and then he, illegally, without seeking the approval of the Congress, which he had to do, sends the military out. And to the extent that anyone had any illusions in Chile about the military changing who they were, how they do things, since the last time they were allowed to just run wild on the streets of the country, those illusions were utterly shattered within 24 hours. Because they immediately did the exact same shit they did under Pinochet. They started just murdering people. People just kept turning up dead. You had all sorts of, it was like 37 people who were definitely extrajudicially executed by the military or the military police. You had a fairly significant number of deaths in very suspicious circumstances. Like, officially, they died in a fire. There was no proper investigation. Nobody tried to preserve the scene. Nobody looked at trace evidence. There was no forensic investigation at all. And the families would, arrange for, like, independent pathologists to check out the bodies, and they would find that they had bullet holes in them. And in at least one case that I know of, an actual bullet. And on top of that, they were in places that were miles away from any place that they would ever have been expected to be. Like, the official explanation is that these people were looting, and then they got caught while they set a fire while they were in there. Except, these were not exactly people who you would expect to find looting. and they were in places that were miles away from any place that they would have any reason to be, in like on the opposite end of town, in places that where it's not really clear what they'd even be looting. And there were lots of cases like this, and cases where, like, at one point, a shopping mall in the north of Santiago, people started to hear, the military and the military police had taken it over, and people in the area were hearing, like, screams and stuff and seeing people dragged in by the soldiers. That it was very clearly, all indications pointed to it being used as a torture center, and the minute this starts being discussed, wow, what do you know? Shit starts burning down. And meanwhile, I mean, the military police went on an absolute just torture and mutilation spree. Like, they were shooting people's eyes out so frequently that, I mean, if you look at footage of the protests, you will see everybody's wearing, like, high-grade goggles. Because everybody knew there was a real chance that you would get blinded by shotgun fire, like less lethal shotgun fire, if you went to these protests. So people, I mean, the entire country was selling out of these goggles and everything. I mean, and there's just so much of this. There are like thousands of political prisoners. And, I mean, it really looked like Piñera was going to fall for a while. He was kind of saved from that by a deal that, among other things, involved the guy who's the current president, the so-called leftist president, Gabriel Boric. I mean, I mean, this guy, Piñera, had approval ratings that were within the margin of error of 0. Like, literally, like, I mean, we're talking less than 5% approvals, negatives through the fucking roof. That's the guy we're talking about. Y ahora vamos a ver lo que dicen los medios chilenos de este hueón nefasto. Primero, el presidente Boric. I'm gonna try to sort of switch back and forth to follow this up, so that people who are not Spanish speakers are also understanding what's going on. But let me see. Okay, presidente Boric por muerte de Sebastián Piñera. Fue un demócrata desde la primera hora. He was a Democrat from the start. He's talking about Sebastián Piñera, the guy who did all the shit I was just telling you about. Who has a human rights record that actually, like, one of Boric's campaign promises had to be anybody who wanted to actually win the presidency in Chile after Piñera kind of had to say that they were going to be charging this motherfucker for the atrocities he committed. And now he's saying, fue un demócrata desde la primera hora. Ok, vamos a ver lo que dice el señorito Boric de este hueón tan nefasto. Lower Manhattan in August 2011, one young lad and his unfortunate haircut stood up before a largely indifferent crowd and took a bullhorn in hand.
My name is Caleb, and I'm a former student.
In those days, the streets of New York and the U.S. as a whole teemed with discussions of inequality and class struggle. But Caleb would not be dissuaded from his belief that he was telling people something they'd never heard before.
Class, and that's what we're talking about. Class against class. Say it with me. Class against class. Class against class.
They did not say it with him.
It's not about a liberal program or a conservative program.
Soon thereafter, his haircut abandoned him, denouncing him as a reactionary pseudo-leftist. And thus began for Caleb Maupin a lifelong mission to find people who would be impressed with the things that came out of his mouth. The mission that led to the founding of the CPI.
I was called Nazgul, a Strasserist.
Nazgul Ghoul.
Transphobe.
Fascist sympathizing shitlord.
Sex cult leader. Pretending to be a left.
A real asshole.
Special red boy.
11 years later, now the revered ideological leader of the CPI, Mark II. An older, wiser Caleb Maupin enchants adoring throngs with his trademark combination of white guys and American flags. The ideological leader has now truly come into his own, and thanks to his many revolutionary exploits, now finds his name in the same breath as those of some of the best-known men of our times.
C.K. and Harvey Weinstein and
Caleb Maupin.
But what is the CPI?
A collection of dudes who get scientifically, measurably negative pussy.
The CPI is an organization dedicated to spreading the revolutionary teachings of ideological leader Caleb Maupin, where all activities are firmly rooted in his cardinal rule for life.
Being an asshole is not a crime. All along, I had been something different. I'm really tired of this woke crap. I would get excited about seeing, revolutionary armies marching in uniforms and such.
CPI members are steeped in the revolutionary discipline of Maupin thought and learn essential life skills, such as how to deal with being exposed
Now,
as a sex
spanking isn't
offender.
just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Or to talk down to the working class.
So welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notification bell. Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook. Put this up on your Reddit. Be sure to cut and paste. Cut and paste a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group. Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your
How to stand in solidarity with marginalized groups who are being persecuted by the state.
I would be at risk of arrest, not for the contents of the book, but as a trans person speaking and existing in public. On March 2nd, Tennessee became the first state to ban drag performances. Oh my God! Oh my God!
How to make fascism sound like communism. And much, much more. So if you're one of the many who love to be condescended to, who love social democracy if only it could be more reactionary, who love fascism but wish it could come with a side of welfare state capitalism, or just enjoy saluting flags, or if you've ever wanted to be part of a cult of personality for someone with no discernible personality, the CPI might be for you. Well, that is a really shitty likeness of Fred Hampton. Oh, that's William Z. Foster. Yeah, that is Huey Long. You can just barely see, the light isn't really good on these names. But that's supposed to be Fred Hampton, which I never would have guessed.
we have had an amazing event. Elizabeth found this
Like,
venue.
I mean, who to name a more epic duo? Huey Long and Fred Hampton. People other than Caleb Maupin also say she was one of the leaders, so okay, that's something.
She was the main journalist for the Union Record, which was the wobbly labor paper in Seattle. And then, after the strike was defeated, she heard about this new country that was created called the Soviet Union, and she...
It's interesting how he does not hold the fact that she was a wobbly against her. I would not actually expect that Caleb Maupin would have much sympathy for the Wobs, of which I am one, I should know.
Went over there and saw what they were achieving, the amazing things that they were achieving. She came back to the United States and wrote books about it and went on speaking tours about it. And eventually, she moved to Moscow, and she was the editor of the Moscow News, which was the English language newspaper that they had in Moscow in the 1930s. So I like to say she was RT before RT. She's old school RT right here. This is old school RT.
Yeah, which is funny because actually, if you... I've recommended his stuff before, and it's definitely worthwhile. Andrei Rudoy, or Viesnik Bury, has done some very interesting deep dives into the way the Soviet Union is presented in contemporary Russian media and school textbooks and stuff like that. And let me just say, it's not favorable. I don't know that Anna Louise Strong would necessarily want to be associated with RT. Oh, now we're going to get his gloss on this. As a guy who's very clearly not particularly interested in the idea that the workers should actually control production, very carefully avoids that in Marx. I mean, it's like I can't wait to see what he does to take this through his de-revolutionizer. Because he takes, like, we've seen him do it with Marx, we've seen him do it with a few other people. He takes, like, actually fairly revolutionary ideas and strips them of everything that is somehow inconsistent with maintaining capitalism.
Kids memorize poems in school. And there's one poem they used to make kids memorize, and because it was so widely taught in school, people make fun of it a lot. So you've probably heard people reference it. And it goes like this. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree.
Actually, I believe my English teachers made fun of this poem on many occasions. I don't think we ever had to read it. Like, what the hell does this have to do with anything, though?
A tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may, in summer, wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosoms snow has lain.
Like, what's the point? How does this follow from the Seattle general strike?
Who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. You ever hear that poem before? Yeah. Well, that was written by Joyce Kilmer, and Joyce Kilmer was shot in the head during World War I. And that poem expressed the pessimism of the age.
What? What? Oh, that poem. Okay. That poem expressed the pessimism of the age? That did not strike me. Chat, help me out here. Am I wrong, or did that not seem like a very pessimistic poem? I mean, especially compared to, we're talking about poems around the World War I era. There are lots more pessimistic poems from that period. Like, that's a poem about how trees are lovely, actually. Like, what the fuck? So, I mean, we've gone from him not finding the Americanism that permeates Anna Louise Strong's writing to the pessimism of the beauty of trees, which is interesting when you consider that he's kind of very anti-environmental. So maybe this is pessimistic. Maybe it's pessimistic because he would like to see it being burned in a wood-burning generator or some shit. It's not contributing to carbon emissions.
Just the belief that all this technological advancement, all this progress, wasn't really leading to a beautiful new world. Instead, it was just giving us new weapons with which to kill each other.
Where's that in the fucking poem? Like, there are so many poems that actually say these things. There are, like, where's that in the poem? Is this the abridged version? And if it's abridged, why did he leave out this bit? Because I didn't hear it in here.
New technology with which to gun each other down. It was looking to nature, looking with defeat at humanity. Only God can make a tree. Looking at human progress, looking at the...
Where's human progress in there? Like, I mean, where? I mean, technology isn't even in the poem. It doesn't take any position on it at all. Like, maybe the author of the poem also wrote other things that might be more suited to this argument, though I have no idea.
The idea that we can advance as a species with pessimism and cynicism and hopelessness. It's a cry of defeat.
Where?
And, as I said, war...
It is... Where's the cry of defeat? It's just a sappy poem about a tree.
Brings out the worst in people.
Okay, first of all... Okay, the poem about the tree. A poem lovely as a tree. When was that written? 1913... let me see. That was written in... Okay. It was published in 1915. Okay, Joyce Kilmer. When did Joyce Kilmer actually go to war? Oh, okay, the poem about the trees? That was published in 1913. The war wasn't going on yet. The war literally could not have brought this out in him. Let's see. Yeah, he wasn't even in the war. Yeah, well, he's from the U.S., so obviously he wasn't in the war until the U.S. joined it. But, so, like, how is a poem written 1 year before World War I started an example of how war brings out the worst in people? I mean, and how is that evidenced by the fact that he got killed in a war that hadn't happened yet when he wrote the poem? Like, what did he think of the tree poem? Like, this is so fucking disjointed. They prepare so much, like, training people to applaud him and stuff, but he does not bother to make sure that there's any kind of narrative. Wait a second. Now I understand. Because his, like, attack on the people who came forward about all the fucked up shit that was going on in CPI Mark I, part of his accusation towards them was that it had to be untoward because there was a narrative flow. And I understand this now, because narrative flow is not a sort of sorcery he has mastered.
And he went through basic training, and they gave him an IQ intelligence, test, and he tested pretty high, and so they switched him into the U.S. Navy, and he was an officer in the U.S. Navy. So then after the war, he went to meet up with all the young men who had fought with him in the U.S. Marines. But he couldn't meet with them because they were all dead.
Well, then who organized the fucking meeting? He went to what did he call the meeting? and nobody RSVP'd and he went anyway? How?
All of them had died except for one. And he met with the one surviving member of his unit in the U.S. Marines. And the guy was visibly not well. And in the conversation they had when they had dinner, he bragged to my grandfather about all the gold that he had pulled out of the teeth of Japanese corpses during the war. And my
lovely. I mean, that's wonderful. See, that is the sort of thing that comes of writing poems that are kind of sappy about how nice trees are. That's what happens. I mean, one minute you're writing fucking poems about that are a little bit cheesy about how nice trees are, and that one thing leads to another, and writing those kinds of fucking poems will have you removing gold teeth from people, apparently.
And my grandfather, the visceral hatred he had for the U.S. Marine Corps, that was a result of seeing the very same things that motivated Joyce Kilmer. The very same things that
Well, Joyce Kilmer hadn't seen that shit yet. Joyce Kilmer had not seen any of those things when he wrote the tree poem. He wrote the tree poem in 1913. He didn't even go off to war till 1917. What the fuck is this guy on about? And now we've got, what, Rosa Luxemburg?
Describing when she wrote about socialism or barbarism. She said that imperialism left unhinged up to its natural capacity would lead to desolation, degeneration, depopulation, and a great cemetery in Europe. It would lead to civilizations coming apart. She was describing...
I need somebody to provide me a diagram of this talk.
What Friedrich Nietzsche talks about when he talks about the blonde beast, and how by becoming a colonizer and an imperialist, the Western man was losing any pretense of being...
People who, quote Nietzsche favorably are famously the sort of people you definitely want to listen to.
Civilized, any moral code. It was becoming the law of the jungle once again. Might makes right. Cruelty, the thriving of the most sadistic and vicious elements. That's what imperialism was leading to. And in imperialist wars, we see that ugliness come out, and that's what drives a lot of the...
Jesus. How did we get here? I've had fever dreams with better continuity than this fucking talk.
That we saw in the lead up to the First World War. But Marxism is the opposite of that. Marxism is a celebration of human creativity.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. How the... Did anyone else get whiplash just now?
Frederick Engels.
How the fuck does anyone make him the cult leader? He literally cannot give a speech. These are prepared remarks, mind you. He's looking at notes. And there is zero flow to this shit. Chat, am I the only one who doesn't know how the hell we got here? Okay, so Seattle General Strike, Americanism, then the tree thing, which was just proof that war brings the worst things out in people, because apparently thinking trees are pretty is pessimistic. And writing a tree poem 4 years before you go off to a war that hasn't started yet is proof that the war brings out the worst in people. What? And now it's oh well, and apropos Marxism.
And it is labor that brings about this distinction. What's he saying there? He's saying that ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands
I don't think they're called ant farms, actually.
of years. Beavers have been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. But in just 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones.
I don't think that Engels was talking about space travel and iPhones, actually. But then, I mean, we already had this thing where the tree poem is the result of a war that hadn't happened yet, bringing out the worst in a poet.
And we are constantly reinventing our relationship with our environment. We are...
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Maupin, for example, is constantly reinventing his relationship.
Problem that we're in right now
is just...
Because we need to be very clear about what is driving the crisis. This is one thing that it's basic Marxism.
The crisis, which he's never actually, like, the crisis. You know, you're supposed to actually say what the crisis is, and then we can talk about what's... Like, there's no antecedent here. There's no, like, there's zero flow. This is constipation, the speech.
If you read old pamphlets from the 1930s, if you asked Anna Louise Strong or William Z. Foster or Huey Long or even Fred Hampton,
like, what is the idea is that those four people would all have the same answer to what the crisis is, or even whether there is one? Huey Long, Anna Louise Strong, Fred Hampton, William Z. Foster. I mean, totally just all ideologically enmeshed. And looking at Caleb Maupin with frank amazement that anyone actually would deliberately go out of their way to hear him speak. Because, like, there are people who are capable of something great. This motherfucker aspires to create something mediocre. Like, this is easily the most mediocre-ass cult I've ever seen.
Or doing some other job where they're miserable, and they're saying to themselves, I'm miserable because I know I could be doing something beautiful right now. I could be...
Yeah, sleeping, smoking weed, doing literally just about anything. Because he also doesn't understand about alienation. Like, you never hear him talk about alienation, which is kind of an important concept. It is actually, I mean, I would have to say, one of the best things that Marx came up with. Really, the fact that people are just sort of, you know, have absolutely no connection to what they're doing all day. They're just doing it so that they can survive capitalism for another day. And they don't give a fuck, really, what they're producing or what service they're providing. They just sort of mechanically go through the motions.
Designing something. I could be studying engineering. I could be studying science.
Why don't you go and do that, Caleb? I mean, and just, you know, just do that.
Tribute.
I mean, you could be studying Marx, then maybe you would at the very least get some of these things right.
All my society has given me is a low-wage, short-term service sector job. It's given me a phone to dazzle me. It's legalized all kinds of...
I get a phone to dazzle me. Yeah, I mean, don't you... we're all dazzled by our phones, right? I mean, they're just dazzling.
Drugs that I can use and screw myself up with. And my potential is
and my job won't even let me do them because they drug test me.
Not being utilized. And
that is yeah, of course, that is what people are totally... I mean, everybody's just... All they want is to have their potential utilized.
Frustration that so many young people have in this country right now. They say young people are lazy, they don't want to do anything. Bullshit. When people are 19 years old, 20 years old, 22, 23, that's when they want to go out and do things.
Yeah, when, like, and then you get to be 44 and it's like, yeah, fuck that. Things suck. I just want to lie around with cats. Some of them might even want to be dentists because they have a tooth fetish.
I'm a little older now. I'm not officially a youth anymore. Did you know that?
Motherfucker, you never were. You were a fully formed junior high vice principal when you came out of the womb.
Gonna be.
What were the overheard words by the Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom?
Farias saying, "Where are the men calling this out?" in response to the women getting punched in the face. The Women's Caucus tweeted, "We are deeply disturbed and concerned about widespread reports of attacks against women in New York City that have been confirmed by the NYPD." So where are the men calling this out? Oh, there's one.
Oh, that's right. Because Tim Pool, the Tim Pool cast is a Subway Strangler stand space. He is really big into the Subway Strangler. He's a big fan of the Subway Strangler, and I love his whole argument is that you need Subway Stranglers because otherwise there's going to be crime. Non-strangling related crime. He's cool with there being strangling related crime on the subway, at least when it's like white dudes from fucking Long Island doing it. But yeah.
You arrested him. And look at these scumbags. This guy right here, scumbag. This guy right here, these cops are scumbags.
Well, I mean, they are cops. I really can't. But why are these two guys specifically? I mean, that's interesting because Tim Pool isn't exactly ACAB friendly. I wonder what it could be about these two particular cops that make them scumbags to Tim Pool.
Sorry, and we're tomorrow morning on the Culture War, we got some cops on, and we're going to debate policing. But sorry, if I was a cop and they said you're going to be transporting Daniel Penn, I say the hell I am.
Hey Tim, we're just following orders though.
No dice. Don't play that game. They're going to be like, well, you got to do it or you're fired. I'll be like, by all means, you go ahead and fire me. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say I got fired because I refused to take part in the arrest of an innocent man.
He wasn't innocent. I mean, this is new. He's not previously been a Subway Strangler truther. I mean, previously his defense was it was good that he strangled that dude because you can't have poor black people who are having mental health crises on the subway without getting strangled by white dudes. Now he's innocent. Now that's a new twist. And
who was trying to save lives in a city plagued by corruption.
He killed a dude though.
Corruption and crime. But these cops got no problem. They got no problem justifying in their mind why they should be the one to hold this innocent man, this good Samaritan with cuffs behind.
Good Samaritan? Wow. I mean, the amount to have somebody look at you the way that Tim Pool looks at the Subway Strangler.
Behind his back. Scumbags. And then they say, where are the men calling this out? You don't need men.
Well, I mean, I just can't help noticing that the people who are doing the attacks are almost certainly overwhelmingly men. And you just showed an example of the sort of violent, you're not really helping your case, Tim, to do with that.
You say we don't need men, and it is to the point where politically they are arresting the men who are trying to protect them.
Protect them from who? Protect them from who exactly? I mean, there's a famous, it's like a late 19th century, like, women's suffrage campaigner who, I forget her name. I'm sure you could find it fairly easily, and I could too if I could be bothered to Google it. But, so she finished addressing a meeting, and a friend of hers, a male friend of hers, said, okay, let me know when you're ready, I'll escort you home. And she says, oh no, I'm fine, I'll go on my own. He goes, but it's men's role to protect women. And she says, from whom though? And apparently he had nothing to say after that. Tim Pool, on the other hand, has something to say because he wants more Subway Stranglers. Because that'll make the world safe for women. Because, like, Subway Stranglers never target women.
All lies. It's all not true.
Many of them were saying specifically that he's like funded by the KKK.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Which kind of doesn't make sense. And also,
why doesn't that make sense? Are we going to explain why the KKK wouldn't want to, like, fund a white nationalist mass shooter who got away with it?
So there's, I do think it makes sense though that
the right is the conspiracy.
Well,
side.
that like BLM types are anti-Rittenhouse, although he didn't kill any black people.
Well, maybe that's because BLM types don't like it when people get murdered. Like, there are people who would be alive now if Kyle Rittenhouse had not been able to get a gun that day. Like, literally, that's the only... He's the reason those motherfuckers are dead.
The white people he killed were effectively pro-BLM?
Yeah.
So,
Well, effectively. Yeah, they were at the fucking protest. They literally went to the protest. And yeah, when people get murdered for going to a protest, the people that are in the movement that they're a part of tend to have feelings about that. In fact, I mean, one of the reasons that de-escalation is the counterinsurgency strategy of choice at protests in the US for the most part is precisely because the experience of the US military in occupied territories dealing with protests is that it's better if you can avoid martyrs, because martyrs galvanize movements. They are mobilizing. And so they try, for the most part, not to kill people at the protest, to do other things, intimidate them in other ways, you know, mass arrest, kettling, all that shit. But try not to kill anyone, for the most part. And for the most part, they don't. This is actually, I mean, there's that bullshit meme that goes around that tries to suggest that the reason that, like, that protests are tame here is that it is unusually, that the cops are unusually violent, which is kind of wild in international comparison because, I mean, even domestically, that doesn't make sense because the people who are most likely to be killed by cops also have a long history of having the most militant protests in this country. But then you go to places like Chile or Palestine, for example, where the cops are way more violent at protests than here, and people are also way more militant. So that whole meme that goes around every couple of years is just such nonsense. But the point is, yes, it turns out that martyrs galvanized movements.
So in a sense, it does make sense.
The logic is maybe that...
In a sense, it does make sense. Yes, thank you. It is kind of obvious that maybe people in a movement might have a bone to pick with somebody who murdered people from that movement.
They're pretty shaky.
Yeah, so...
Pretty shaky on... Why? What do you mean pretty shaky, though? I mean, we just established he killed a bunch of BLM protesters.
I think, is it soft of me to say, like, a female version of Daniel Penny would be nice? Like, a girl to protect me? Why does the man always have... Like, if the woman was armed,
We're getting an interesting view into this random dude's... Like, who... Does anyone know who this guy even is? I've never seen him before. But I
don't know. Somewhere in my mid-20s, I was like, no... The ability to protect me and like the steps that they actively take to defend themselves and the people they care about, like this is something I now think about a lot when dating.
Yeah, I mean, if I were hanging around these dudes, I would be thinking about the need for protection too. I mean, like, I mean, fucking between all of them. I mean, for one thing, we're on our way to Tim Pool talking about how he and his friends can't get laid, but then saying that actually that's not their problem, but they keep on talking about it for other reasons. It's other guys who are having that problem. I mean, see, you know, if this were the circle I would hang out on, yeah, I would definitely want to be packing, because that, I mean, that's just, that can't possibly go well. I mean, we're getting some insights into this dude's FetLife profile.
Could be the bait, and then the one gets... No?
I mean, to be fair, a lot of people be a trophy husband, so if you're a wealthy woman looking for a husband, this is a lot.
No, and then, I mean...
Yeah, but why?
And like, you know, I could bait the person, people are arguing with me, and then she could light him up for me.
That's real feminism. That's a male ally.
That's not a male ally, though. Like, that's not how... That's just literally... leaving aside the liberal nonsense that goes under the name of ally politics, that's not how that actually works. The point of allies isn't that they start shit that you then have to finish.
Feminism, yeah. I don't want to carry the firearm. It would be hot for the woman to. Yeah. Do you think he has any?
I think
Scarlett Johansson stuff.
I think that if you look at divorce rates and you look at the opinions of women, typically situations where it's rare the situation where the man is in the stay-at-home role or the non-provider role, like it doesn't tend to work. And I think what the data shows is that guys feel insecure if they're not providing. And
well, so the problem is then that the guys feel insecure because they're being expected to do something that people aren't always in a position to do. And maybe that's actually not great for the guys, though. Maybe it would be good if guys were, understood that actually they don't always have to be the one to do that because others are actually able to fill that, there doesn't need to be a vacuum to fill. Other people can also do it.
And women tend to feel unsatisfied if they're not receiving more.
Would she not respect
receiving more? What exactly?
To me if she was carrying instead of me.
Okay, this is the thing. I think the protection thing is so interesting because when I was younger and like full of life and fearless, like I thought about it less when I was dating people, and now that I'm older, like I think it was like.
But I mean, who are you needing protection against? No, she's just pretending. She wants you to leave her alone.
My wife outsleeps me. I'm like, how are you still asleep? Like, I've been up for like 3 hours. What are you doing? Women do need more sleep on average. She's absolutely correct.
And there's another thing.
Wow, I mean, the sample size is really impressive there.
Too, for a long time, I think up until the early 90s, painkillers were only tested on men.
Mm-hmm.
And so these doctors were like, man, these women are so weak. They're complaining. We give them painkillers. And then they realized, oh, they don't work on women.
No,
it isn't that they don't work on them, but the dosage works differently because actually, like, metabolism is different. But what does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with why men are not useless?
And I mean, it's really interesting seeing how many like.
In fact, I mean, the thing is, what he's pointing out there, which he does not want to acknowledge, is that actually medical science is sexist as hell, and that actually those studies on women and pain and like differential, like gender differential symptoms and differential diagnoses, what it's found is that often the presenting symptoms of very serious issues like heart attacks, for example, in women are not recognized by clinicians. They're not trained to they're not trained to recognize them. And they will like send women who are having an active acute MI home, thinking that the pain that she's having, the anginal pain she's having, is actually just stress. So, which is an actual thing, but I'm not sure how. I mean, that's not exactly an example of men not being useless. Because who thought that they should do all these studies and not check to make sure that, not include enough women to make sure about these things? In fact, a big part of why this changed was precisely because women were in a position to start making decisions about how to design these studies and said, wait a second, it's kind of fucked up that 50% of the population isn't being accounted for when we try to understand the differential, what certain symptoms mean and how drugs work and all this shit.
This is a retaliatory attack from Iran.
By bombing the Iranian consulate compound. This was a direct violation of international law. This was a direct violation and also a major escalation in this conflict. It's not about Israel showing restraint. It's about what America does. It was about what America does from the jump. The fact that Joe Biden, after October 7, gave a bare...
Wait. It's about what America does? I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, why would you say that it's about what the U.S. does when we're talking about a U.S. client state that is totally beholden to the U.S. and is basically doing whatever the U.S. says?
For one, regardless of if America did anything right now in support of or neutral to Israel, Israel has a pretty powerful arsenal behind it, dude.
Oh yeah, which is not true. I mean, yeah, they do have an arsenal, but their arsenal, they have been depleting it. They have been dropping so many bombs on Gaza that the U.S. is having to keep on resupplying them. If the U.S. cut them off, they would really be fucked, because they are dropping ridiculous amounts of bombs on Gaza. Like, they, in, like, the first week, they dropped about as many bombs on Gaza as the U.S. had dropped on Afghanistan in ever. You know, that is how quickly they are using this shit up. So, yeah, actually, no, Israel does kind of have to listen to what the U.S. says, because, let's just pretend that Israel had not been using up all their bombs, doing the genocide that, Xanderhal does not seem to care a whole hell of a lot about. Let's just pretend that that isn't the case. Let's assume he's totally right and they've got all of their stuff. They still have only one real source for resupply, and that's the U.S. Nobody is in a position to replace the U.S. If the U.S. said that, you know, even suggested there was the possibility that they would not continue to resupply Israel, Israel would have to take that into account, because they would be going from a situation of basically infinite ammo to a situation of very finite ammo. So what he's saying here is just bullshit.
To decades and decades and decades of American private military corporation, like, manufacturing and shipping, and the U.S. supplying them with funds and...
Yeah, like, he's actually making Hassan's point. He's like, why does anyone care what the U.S. does in all this? Because look at all the stuff that the U.S. sends to Israel. Yeah, because that makes sense.
Excess military. This entire conflict just got made so much more complicated, and as much as I want to be able to take the easy, like, receive nothing but praise and claps from my audience position of, like it's as simple as Israel is bad, and
Israel is bad, though.
Always bad, because they're killing children.
Like, wait, he's not gonna take that position?
Like, Hamas is also bad. Iran's government is also quite fucking bad. We don't want them gaining a strong foothold by potentially crippling Israel, which is our foothold in the Middle East. We don't want Iran...
Why exactly do we get to have a foothold in somebody else's fucking region, Xanderhal? Like, I mean, I like how he's like, I'm not gonna... I could take the easy position of saying genocide bad, but I'm not going to, because the alternative to genocide is that the U.S., the country that is committing genocide, might lose their foothold on somebody else's oil. I mean, wow, man. I mean, he just... Every time I watch Xanderhal, I hear the worst thing I've ever heard him say.
Iran gaining a foothold in the Middle East.
Iran gaining a foothold in the region that the country is in.
Hassan is American. I think he was born in America. He is a born American citizen.
Yeah, exactly. And that is why those of us whose governability the U.S. depends on in order to commit these crimes have a particular responsibility to oppose them by all means necessary. Like, what's your fucking point, Xanderhal?
Like, he should have some level of concern about countries that are outright hostile towards America. And
why do you think that they're hostile to the U.S., Xanderhal? Do you think, motherfucker, like, are you new? Are you fucking new that you don't realize why it is that nobody in the region wants the U.S. there? Like, why would anyone be hostile to the U.S.? The U.S. is just a small bean. It's the U.S.'s birthday. Are you gonna oppose military aggression by the birthday boy?
The idea of being like, yeah, no, these are the good guys. Is absolutely fucking insane.
Nobody said they're the good guys, but we're not. The U.S. is not the good guys. The people doing genocide, Xanderhal. I mean, I know you're an ex-Nazi who actually sounds more and more like just a regular Nazi. But the people doing genocide are never the good guys, Xanderhal. Ever.
Institution considers what is happening in Gaza an ethnic cleansing. Consider...
What is it?
That they violated, such as...
What? I'm curious. What, like, institution considers what is happening in Gaza an ethnic cleansing?
How much time you got? How much fucking time you got? I mean, the International Court of Justice said it was plausible that Israel was committing genocide and ordered them, over a month ago now, to stop killing people and stop obstructing aid, and that has been flagrantly rejected, defied by the U.S. and Israel. Like, numerous top respected scholars of the Holocaust and genocide have been ringing the alarm bells for months about this. Like, I mean, it's easier to count the ones that deny it's a genocide.
Like, are there any human rights
yes!
institutions that are, like, really well reputable and, like, agreed upon to not be, like, super biased in like, a particular country's favor or something, for any weird reasons that could be easy to pick apart for somebody?
Just out of curious, let's see. Amnesty Gaza. Okay, Amnesty International, here, I'll just put this here. I mean, Amnesty International seems to be a fairly uncontroversial human rights organization for a guy like Xanderhal. I mean, if anything, they tend to have a revolving door with the State Department, and they say, Amnesty International welcomes the new report by UN Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, which concludes that, quote, there are reasonable grounds to believe the threshold indicating Israel's commission of genocide is met. So, I've just dropped that link in chat for you. So, yeah, lots of them actually would go way further than just saying ethnic cleansing, which generally just means kicking people out of the land. Like, ethnic cleansing was the Nakba, when, like, 750,000 Palestinians were kicked out of their homes. And I decided I had never actually... You always hear about the ethnic cleansing, the mass expulsion of people, but I'd never actually heard how many people were killed, how many Palestinians were killed. So I went back the other day to look that up. And the number that I found, apparently, that seems to be the consensus is 15,000. Which is to say that Israel and the U.S. topped the Nakba within, like, the first month of this thing.
Like, is there grounds to say what's happening in Gaza is an ethnic cleansing?
Yes, Israel has explicitly said so.
Because
this motherfucker was just criticizing Hassan's research methods, and here he is. He's been crapping on about Gaza and telling people not to care about it for like a month or so now. He hardly says anything about it, but when he does, it's why people shouldn't care about it. And he somehow did not notice that just about every respected human rights institution internationally is saying that it's genocide.
Technically, what's happening in Gaza doesn't even meet international law's definition of a genocide.
He doesn't understand the difference between genocide and ethnic cleansing. But he's going to explain why the International Court of Justice and the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and every international law scholar who isn't working for the Israeli government or the US government is wrong right now. Like, he does not understand that genocide actually is a step beyond ethnic cleansing. That ethnic cleansing just means kicking people out, and genocide tends to mean, like, actually trying to kill them. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the one thing that is generally accepted is that genocide is worse than ethnic cleansing. I mean, although there are people who say, actually, and I think there is a lot of merit, I'm using the legal definitions here, and there is, you're quite right, there isn't a specific legal definition of ethnic cleansing, although there is forced transfer of populations, which is actually, I mean, that's a war crime under international law, and that basically falls under that is basically the normal accepted definition of ethnic cleansing as well. But he apparently does not understand that genocide is actually considered to be a step beyond that.
Which is, you know, I think a kind of a mark on the definition of genocide by international law, less so than a, like, a sort of, like, oh yeah, Israel's doing nothing wrong kind of point.
Like, does he understand? He has not paid any attention to any of this. He is telling his audience this, and they are at this point just sucking up to him. Like, no, there's zero pushback. And he does not know the first thing about what's going on. I don't know why I should feel surprised about this.
Like, they're not... From everything that I have been able to tell, the goal is not to wipe out all Palestinians.
They say the goal is to wipe out all Palestinians, and they are doing things that are capable of making that fucking happen. They have cut them off. The only reason that there's any food at all being allowed into Gaza is because Biden was feeling the pressure, and so there's been some symbolic humanitarian aid. Nowhere near enough. Nowhere near the already inadequate pre-October 7th levels. I mean, hardly any, but it's, you know, symbolic. But Israel's official stance has been not one drop of water, not one scrap of food, not one bit of medicine, not one drop of fuel gets in. Yeah, they, you know, very explicitly, you know, Netanyahu says that they are Amalek and they should be exterminated like Amalek. And you hear there are videos on TikTok of Israeli death squads singing songs about how they're going to exterminate Amalek. And it gets on Israeli TV, and on Israeli TV, the presenters are like, see, those young lads, they understand what we need to be doing. I mean, on Israeli state TV, they had literal fucking children singing a song called We Will Annihilate Them, which includes a line about how in a year's time no one will be left alive in Gaza. Like, I mean, how Xanderhal has to be making a special effort not to know anything about this to be saying this shit.
Care how many of the human shields Hamas uses, they have to...
he's doing the human shield bullshit too. He's just, I mean, it's just one Israeli talking point after another. I had people in the comments when I did the first one where I was pointing out that he was just, you know, fucking parroting Israeli talking points, saying, no, I'm sure he didn't mean that. He probably was gonna say that actually it's worse. They were, you know, he was being sarcastic, he was being ironic. No, he's just outright saying, these are just Israeli talking points. There's no evidence of Palestinian resistance forces using human shields. There is film. We've got Israeli goons on film forcing Palestinians to walk point on their patrols. You know, they have an official stated, it has a name, it's called the neighbor procedure, where they use Palestinians as human shields when they go into Palestinian villages and stuff, so that nobody will, like, fire on them or something like that. I mean, he's just gargling the fucking propaganda. Yeah, it's a very good word for it. He's bogarting that shit. I mean, Xanderhal at this point is just a Hasbara stream.
through to get to it. And that's the horrific thing about Israel. Hamas uses human shields, and Israel doesn't fucking care most of the time. Well, I'm sure most of the time they do. To be real, I've seen a lot of...
Most of the time? He's sure most of the time they do. Like... Actually, Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur that said that the threshold for genocide was met, and was, her report was spoken of very approvingly by Amnesty International, who I would imagine would fit his definition of a respected institution or whatever. One of the points she made is that the whole point of, like, the law of international humanitarian law is you're not supposed to shoot civilians. And Israel turns that around and says that if there are civilians, then, if civilians get killed, they are human shields. Like, there's literally no evidence of Israel ever being deterred by the presence of civilians, including their own civilians, it's worth noting.
A lot of, like, stories where they evacuate people out before they strike, like, a Hamas camp, but too often.
Hamas camp. What he means is the Jabalia refugee camp. And what he's talking about is what's called bomb threats. Israel actually brags about the fact that they call in bomb threats. They'll be like, I do not know of any other army in the world that will call you up and say they are about to bomb you. And it's like, I seem to remember the IRA did that pretty regularly, actually. The difference is the IRA did not, like, call people up, say, we're about to bomb you, and then tell them to go to the place that was about to be bombed. That's an Israeli innovation, to tell people to evacuate to some place that they then bomb. Like, when we're talking about Rafah, the reason there's so many people in fucking Rafah is that Israel told everybody that was the safe area. And once like 1 million people showed up, like half of Gaza's population showed up in Rafah, they started bombing Rafah. I mean, remember how Xanderhal, when we first met Xanderhal on this stream here, on the Seagull stream, all of that time ago, he was talking about why leftists should never be allowed to have any distrust about any ex-Nazi who wants to be in their spaces. Xanderhal was expressing this opinion, being an ex-Nazi himself. And now he is explaining to us where that distrust comes from.
Striking Beirut, Lebanon, not just southern Lebanon.
Yes, Israel has targeted okay, you spelled it mosquitoes almost. Mosques, hospitals, and the university. That's a lot of culture.
And not the university, every fucking university.
Backbone. So you understand that Gaza is like the size of like an old Fallout map, right? Like an old map in a video game. It's not very large, you know?
Yeah, except there are real fucking people in there, Xanderhal.
Hamas controls that area and operates out of every intact, solid building that they can. They're
not operating out of intact, solid buildings. What John Elmer over at EI has called military vandalism, where they're just blowing up the frontage of residential blocks for no military purpose. What it has done is turn them into ideal firing positions. And so actually the resistance factions, all 10 of them, are using the firing positions that Israel has created by vandalizing, people's homes. The people have been expelled long ago, or they're already dead. The frontage of the buildings has been blown off by Israel's tanks and shit. And so now it's an ideal firing position, and they set up, and they snipe at, and they, fire Yasin 105s at Israel's armor. And do so to fairly great effect, it seems, because Israel is running out of fucking armor. Yeah, Twitch has good emote game. Yeah, God.
They're in hospitals. They're in schools.
No, they're not in hospitals. This is I mean, Jesus. He's just, like, fucking, again, he's just gargling the propaganda. There's no evidence that they're in hospitals. There's no evidence that they're in schools. Israel has been attacking hospitals, including with chemical weapons, for literal decades now. Always claiming that Palestinian resistance fighters are using those hospitals as military positions, which there's never been any evidence provided. Never been any evidence. Israel has used those hospitals as military positions, or, I mean, lately they've been using those hospitals as fucking death camps and leaving huge-ass mass graves behind when they're finally kicked out by the resistance. But he's just, like, uncritically parroting this bullshit. Wow. Like, every time I hear this guy, it's the worst thing I've ever heard him say. My respect for him was low at the start, because how I got to know him, I mean, I've never met him personally, just to be clear. I don't know him in that sense. But the way I first became aware of him was when he was, like, helping to direct racist hate mobs at Professor Flowers, lying and claiming that they had advocated white genocide, which is a great thing for a guy who claims to be an ex-Nazi to get very excited about. That, you know, that's not at all a Nazi thing to be, like, fucking fear-mongering about. Like, that was the starting point. And he's been going downhill from that. Yeah, I mean, what he's doing is interesting, because my impression is he's doing this specifically because he wants to stand Biden. And he's really kind of making a lot of our point for us, I think. Because a lot of us have been saying, if you stand Biden, you're standing genocide. And, well, here he is, standing genocide and Biden.
Because of what they are. That, like, I need you guys to think for a moment about this.
Yes, Xanderhal's audience who isn't watching this, please do think for a moment. Oh, no, he is starting to get some pushback. Lefty Jenna says, I do think it's at least clear that there are people in the Israeli government who do want to commit ethnic cleansing. If not even outright genocide. God, that's weak-ass pushback, but it's something.
These things. I know you guys just want to get mad at me because I'm not saying what you want me to just say. I'm not.
I love this thing. Tim Pool will sometimes do this. He will say the most standard right-wing talking point that no one in his audience is going to have a problem with, and go, I know I'm going to get all sorts of stick about this, and he'll break out the most just fucking bland-ass mayonnaise talking point that everybody in his audience will agree with. You know, it's like, here, let me, I can do this too. I can do this too. See, okay, I know I'm gonna get fucking murdered in chat for this, okay? But chat, I gotta say, fuck Xanderhal. I gotta say it. I mean, nobody, people in chat are gonna just absolutely devour me for saying it, but fuck Xanderhal. I mean, his chat, like, literally anybody who had any critical thinking around what the US is doing left him, my monocle is in orbit. Okay, I love that. Is that a reference to something, or is that just something that you came up with off the cuff? I love the image, but, I mean, like, there's nobody left in his chat who is the slightest bit critical of him.
Not falling into audience capture like Hassan does, and I actually do research, and I don't just repeat what's popular to say on Twitter.
You just slagged him off for actually doing research at the beginning of this video, Xanderhal. Do you remember that you did that?
But I need you guys to just think for a moment.
He's gonna make him think. What do you think he's gonna make him think about?
There's no evidence that Israel's currently conducting an ethnic cleansing. What they are conducting, however, this is not a defense of Israel. What they are conducting, however, is a mass colonization effort that involves the displacement and killing of countless people.
This motherfucker, that's literally what it... I can't. Like, okay, you just, like, the teapot is, like, fucking whistling, okay? You made my fucking teapot whistle, Xanderhal. I hope you're happy. Now I want a cup of tea. That is literally what ethnic cleansing is, you absolute... I will now. That is what ethnic cleansing is. Let me just read that about... Let me read that back. Because, like...
There's no evidence that Israel's currently conducting an ethnic cleansing. What they are conducting, however, this is not a defense of Israel. What they are conducting, however, is a mass colonization effort that involves the displacement and killing of countless people in another nation.
That is literally what ethnic cleansing is. It's like it's like he's reading the definition of ethnic cleansing right now.
So, this is not a defense of Israel.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. Except that you're like, because, I mean, if you know what the words mean, it isn't. But he's offering it like he's trying to get them acquitted of ethnic cleansing. That's like saying, okay, your lordship, my client did not commit murder. My client has, and let me just say, all my client has done, your lordship, is commit a killing with specific intent, premeditation, and malice aforethought of another person. There was no murder, just a premeditated killing with specific intent and malice aforethought. That's all, your lordship. I rest my case. Like, you're just reciting the fucking definition.
It's just that the way Hassan talks about this stuff is a problem. It may sound...
Yeah, because he knows what the words mean.
Like I'm being, what's the word for it? Pedant?
No, you're not being... Well, you're trying to be pedantic, but the thing about pedants... The thing of there are qualifications for being a pedant. One of them is you gotta know things.
It may sound like I'm being pedantic and like hyper fixating on certain definitions. But I think it's important to pay attention to the way Hassan words this stuff because it's very emotional on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucked up that people get emotional about the slaughter of over 40,000 people by a regime that has openly said they want to starve the other 2 million to death. Why that's so weird that somebody would get emotional about that. I mean, Xanderhal being a very normal guy, most normal guy ever, he would never get emotional about watching a regime that he lives in, that relies on his governability to do what they do, murder huge numbers of people in the most grotesque fucking ways possible. Like, everybody I know, practically, is some degree of fucking traumatized by this. Especially, like, Palestinian friends of mine, this has got them completely fucked up, as you can imagine, because they got fucking family there. But I'm talking about people who don't. You know, people who have friends who have family there, or people who don't necessarily even know anyone who's Palestinian, but are paying attention, and it's fucking us all up, because this is the worst. I've seen lots of atrocities, and I have absolutely no hesitation in saying this. I have never, in my lifetime, seen a worse atrocity than this one. I have seen all sorts of fucked up shit. This is worse than certainly in this century. But I am willing, I can confidently say in my lifetime as well. And that's not because there's so many wonderful, that it's been wonderful in my lifetime and atrocity free. It's not. But this is different. This is actually kind of unprecedented. Head entry is a demand for precision, but I remember an old diagram showing the difference in precision and accuracy using the metaphor of gunshots on a target. Yeah, I mean, he's being the worst kind of pedant. A pedant who doesn't know shit. His shots are clustered tightly together, but not on the target, the wall, the range. They're all in the door of a Mazda in the parking lot. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Evoking emotion on an important issue to motivate people to care, and evoking emotion on an important issue to make people fall for your misinformation.
But you have not given a single example of misinformation from him yet. You've provided lots of examples of your own misinformation. He has not, there's not been a single thing that he's been able to point to that Hassan has said that is wrong. At best, what you could say is some of it he has understated the case. Whereas Xanderhal is just, doing a fucking Hasbara speed run. Wow.
Because Hassan's doing the latter, not the former here.
But straight up.
Then it should be really easy for you, Xanderhal, since you totally do research. I mean, a lot of people, even people who follow your stream fairly regularly, would not realize it because he's just that sneaky with his research. He will have you believing he doesn't know a damn thing, but actually, deep down, he does his homework. And then he hides it for reasons. Then it should be really easy to point to an actual fact that Hassan has gotten wrong here.
Striking Beirut, and then another red line when they struck the Iranian consulate and the Iranian consulate compound in Syria, in Damascus. Beyond that, obviously, there were, of course, locations that were attacking Americans versus the Iranian proxy groups in both Syria and Iraq. That is the norm, just like it was the norm for Hezbollah to strike targets in northern Syria versus Israel striking targets in southern Lebanon. But there were moments where Israel went above and beyond in the most belligerent fashion, likely escalating the tensions in the region and likely creating more destabilization.
Yeah, that really was an excellent explanation. This is one of the great things about streaming, I have to say, because there will always be people in chat, or virtually always be people in chat, who can make a point I'm trying to kind of put my finger on better than I can, or they've read something more recently than I have and can actually confirm that I'm actually remembering it correctly. Or the, chat sometimes actually comes up with the funny jokes. I mean, I love that about streaming. I'm gonna go a little bit later because I'm alone here. And I did get a bit of a late start, but I'm gonna be wrapping up fairly soon.
With the hopes that they could bring the United States of America into the conflict directly. Benjamin Netanyahu.
See, this is the one thing that I think he's absolutely wrong about. I mean, this idea that the U.S. can be dragged in. I mean, that's just nonsense. But we already talked about that. But everything else he said is not even controversial.
But this is an amazing story by Tal Shalev ahead of a possible.
Biden won't do it unless America gets directly striked. Or one of America's really close allies gets directly striked, not even Israel.
There is no closer. Who's closer? Who is a closer ally to the U.S. than Israel, though? Israel is the hands-down leading recipient of U.S. military aid.
But I mean, I don't know, Britain or something gets striked. I can't see it.
Oh, okay. So he is getting some pushback. Demo Boy here in his chat has pointed out the genocide definition does actually apply.
America, I mean, even then, fuck. America putting boots on the ground, particularly Biden signing off on that. Biden issuing that executive order would be political suicide. He's already teetering on the edge.
I mean, what he's doing now is political suicide. This is killing his re-election chances. And his own people know it, which is why they're trying to find all sorts of cute ways to distance him from it. Like these, these bullshit leaked stories where they're like, he's totally losing, White House staffers say that Biden said that he's pissed off at Benjamin Netanyahu and all this bullshit. Like, he's already fucking killing his re-election chances. I mean, his political career, I don't see how it goes on from this.
Probability to win this election coming November, but I just don't see him signing that executive order and doing something that he damn well knows would be an extremely unpopular decision.
Well, I mean, what he's doing is already extremely unpopular. I mean, only Xanderhal,
Sorry, dude, but you look at the Israeli strategy, looking at a map, Israel has been trying to force Gazans to move south with death and destruction. They want to squeeze them all out through Egypt.
Yeah, okay, somebody else in his chat is pointing out the obvious. And again, what this person in chat is saying to him is uncontroversial and openly acknowledged by Israel.
You're blind, Zan. Your understanding Xanderhal is highly myopic.
That is being so fucking charitable. Okay, and Lucid Burgundy. Okay, so finally, he's getting some pushback. Somebody else points out that a mass starvation campaign, like the openly acknowledged one, because none of what they're saying is something that Israel denies, is the thing, his people in his chat.
You realize you're one of these people. You're so emotional. I'm gonna ban you.
He's going to ban them for just pointing out facts. He said you're so emotional. He literally just pointed out stated, openly acknowledged facts.
Okay. You're gonna take a nice rest tonight, I hope. I hope you go take a nap, have some hot chocolate, maybe.
Fuck you, man.
Yourself some hot chocolate or a nice coffee. Have yourself a nice nap, take some deep breaths, relax a little bit.
What a
I want you
cunt.
to think about this issue.
It sounds like they have been thinking about this issue, Xanderhal, because they pointed out just uncontroversial facts. None of that was controversial. None of that is actually disputed. That is exactly what Israel says they're doing.
And maybe when you wake up, you'll understand why you're dumb.
God, this is the guy, what an amazing debater. You're dumb. Where did he come up with that retort? You're dumb. Why didn't, that's just remarkable. That is just the definitive takedown. You're dumb.
I am not defending Israel. I know.
Yes, you fucking are! Yes, you fucking are! This is like when fucking Tim Pool goes, "Oh, I'm not a Republican or anything. I'm not a Republican or anything." He's his stream is 6 hours of fucking Republican talking points, and then he'll go, "No, actually, you see, I'm a centrist. I'm a liberal, actually, but I'm politically homeless or whatever." Yes, you fucking are defending Israel. You're telling every single one of their lies.
Very, very badly want to hear what I'm saying right now and hear it as a defense of Israel.
The thing is that some people are actually familiar with the basic facts of the situation, and it makes it very hard to see this bullshit as anything else.
Workers' World Party. I was interested in communism. I remember the Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism, which is a breakaway from the Communist Party. They had a workshop about what they stood for, about how do we move towards socialism in America. And I went to the workshop, and it was a PowerPoint presentation, and it was about how Republicans are fascists. Republicans are fascists, and they're dangerous and all that, and we have to defeat the Republicans. And then once we defeat the Republicans, once the Republican Party is just demolished, which is not how a two-party system works, but once the Republicans are defeated, then the Democrats will divide between the pro-monopoly Democrats and the anti-monopoly Democrats. And the anti-monopoly Democrats will gradually start to implement socialist policies. And we won't...
okay. This is more of a fucking theory. I mean, I will say, I also don't think that this is a very good theory. It has not... History has not been kind to this theory of things. But it is more of a theory than he's got. I mean, his whole thing, all he can come up with is that you get communism when productivity goes up a certain amount.
Call it socialism in America, and there won't be a revolution. It won't be like a moment where, there's a revolution. It'll just be like gradually we'll get free healthcare, we'll get free education, and there'll be some like vague name for it, and it'll just kind of gradually happen. And like 100 years from now, we'll basically be living in socialism, but we won't call it that here in America, and it'll be really democratic, and it'll be really, it'll look nothing like communist governments around the world, and it'll be, it'll have a big emphasis on LGBT, and I remember sitting in that workshop and just thinking, what the hell is this? The Republican Party's not just going to go away, right? And I just thought the whole thing was weird, so I raised my hand, and I said, well, I mean, isn't there an issue? It's not an issue of defeating Republicans, it's an issue of like power, and what about the state and stuff like that? I raised my hand and I said this. After I spoke, before they answered my question, this woman behind me who had a nose ring spoke.
Oh, well, if she has a nose ring, that's already self-discrediting.
And she was like 10 years older than me. And she spoke, right? And she had a nose ring, and she had like short hair that was like, combed over her head. Wasn't purple, I don't think. And she spoke, I'm so triggered by that guy's talking about power and authority. I don't want anyone to have power and authority.
Yeah, I'm going to guess. I would love if somebody were to somehow locate the woman he's caricaturing here. I just have a feeling this is exactly not how this went down.
Authority over anyone. It's like she's about to cry in response to my question. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, what's wrong with this? And she's up there, that's what scares me about communist groups. And then she's like attacking the Committees of Correspondence group for having me there asking the question.
I'm calling bullshit here. I do not think this is how this went down.
I asked, what about the state, what about the government, what about power? I don't think the Republicans are just going to go away. And then they hand the microphone to her, and she's like, oh my God, I'm treated by power and scary authoritarian men. And she's like having a meltdown. And I'm just like, what? I'd never seen anybody like that before, right?
I mean, that doesn't... I just don't see it.
And that's now, that's what all the woke protesters are. They're that, right? That was like, I remember thinking, what the hell is that?
Wait, what did you just say?
Authoritarian men that are gonna... And she's like having a meltdown. And I'm just like, what? I had never seen anybody like that before, right? And that's now, that's what all the woke protesters are. They're that.
Yeah, we all know that. I mean, we all put on our nose rings, and we go out on the street, and we do a sort of stage sob that isn't very well done.
Right? And that was I remember thinking, what the hell is that? Right? So then...
It's something you made up, Caleb.
The mic went back to the speaker, and the woman who was putting on the workshop, she looked at me, this kind of condescending smile. She's like, I thought the same thing when I was your age, young man.
Burger King.
We're not going to be storming the Winter Palace. We're not the Bolsheviks. It's going to be just a gradual process, one step at a time.
Well, I mean, let's just remember, he's very much against storming the Winter Palace, too. He's already said that, that what they're doing, it's going to be about getting elected, except, not even that. Briefly, the idea was they were going to, get elected, and then that sort of went away for, I think, obvious reasons. But now they don't really have any, this is still more of a fucking theory than they've got.
It was, what I was hearing was Bernstein, right? It was, the movement is everything, the goal is nothing. And the woman I was hearing it from, she was probably a real communist. She was just a reform. She was like a Communist Party USA revisionist, basically. She wasn't triggered by me talking about the state and all that. And she'd read all those books, and she this was a woman who remembered the 60s. This was an older woman. And she had been a real communist at one point, and she wasn't triggered by what I was saying. She just didn't believe in it anymore. She'd become a reformist social democrat. But the woman...
Well, I mean... by all accounts, you don't believe in that anymore either.
Communism has attached itself to this spirit of deviance, the spirit of revolt, the spirit of rebellion.
Chat, is it a new thing that communism is attached to the spirit of rebellion?
Needs the people come first. We oppose imperialism, but we can't be communists anymore.
Well, I mean, you never actually were, though.
Communism has attached itself to an aesthetic, to an emotion that is toxic. And that emotion, that aesthetic that communism has attached itself to is the main force behind wokeism.
Yeah, I mean, communism was never about rebellions and uprisings before woke.
To the masses! Dare to win! Dare to win!
Wait, dare to struggle? I thought he just got done talking about how they're not doing that anymore. I mean, to the extent that they ever were. Well, struggling with... I mean, they are struggling, let's be honest. I mean, they're constantly struggling with reconciling whatever Caleb Maupin is saying today with what he said 2 days ago. And that's a struggle. That struggle is real.
Town, taking care of business, and turns out around the same time that I went to Midtown to take care of business, it turns out I think it was shortly before.
Wait, so he's saying he didn't have an alibi and he was there to take care of business. That's an interesting phrase to be using repeatedly in this context. I was going down to Midtown to take care of business.
I got into Midtown. Taking out somebody to keep them from talking, that could be what's happening, right? It could be a family dispute, right? It could be...
I mean, it could be there's this weird fucking guy, lives in the 5 boroughs, doesn't have an alibi, and he keeps on talking about how on the morning this happened, he was going to Midtown Manhattan to take care of business. But I would never suspect Caleb Maupin of doing anything based.
Now you can show that you love murder and you've never been laid while enjoying your chai latte.
Wait, he's gonna talk about never having been laid?
eBay has stickers, lawn signs, cell phone cases, most calling to free the prisoner. And Etsy has over 800 items alone donning the phrase, deny, defend, depose, the words etched into the assassin's bullet casings. If this was an Oliver Stone movie, you'd be like, okay, that should never happen. But the media will...
Yeah, I know. He's just so fucking... Because nothing that everything he does is about as organic as microplastics. Okay? So he just hates that, you know, all this money that he has that has been pumped into making Ben Shapiro a thing, all this marketing, all this propaganda, all this bullshit to make him into something, when you just have to listen to him for 5 minutes to see he is not something. He is the opposite of something. Whereas, I mean, somebody goes out and is accused of shooting a popular hate figure, and suddenly they get organic reach that Ben Shapiro could only dream of, and a chance at getting laid, which Ben Shapiro could only dream of.
Poisoning, while one absolute monster actually protested outside the McDonald's. All in all, big year for McDonald's. And we may never know the identity of the employee hero who actually turned in the shooter.
Wow, Ben Shapiro, yeah, that's gotta hurt. I mean, I don't know what would hurt more. You know, you got millions of people saying fuck the snitch, or the fact that the person calling him a hero is Ben Shapiro.
That somebody decided to take a clip of me saying what I'm about to say for this whole stream and clip it and be like, they got me. He said he's not against capitalism.
Well, I mean, he obviously isn't. Oh, okay, 720p is the best it gets. So I'm gonna be looking at this guy like my eyes are blurry the whole time. Okay, fun.
Aha! We got him. Well, I will own this. Because I am not in kindergarten anymore. When you are in kindergarten, what you learn to do is to point at things. You learn your numbers. That is the number one.
I'm glad he's summarizing kindergarten for us. That's two things we know about his life, apparently. He found out about what goes on in kindergarten, and he went to a sandwich shop to work once.
Two, that is the number three. You learn your letters. That is the letter A. That is the letter B. You learn your
I think we get the point.
That is purple. That is green. You learn your fruits. That's an apple. That's a banana. I am not in kindergarten anymore.
And we also know he is not in kindergarten anymore, chat. Just make a note of that. He is not in kindergarten anymore.
It means to me, and that is the phase of history that we are currently in. However, to many people around the world, capitalism means something different. Capitalism means starting their own business. Capitalism means having an idea.
Capitalism means having an idea? Chat, is thinking capitalism?
Capitalism means being able to not have a boss.
Wait a second. What the fuck did he just say?
Means being able to not have a boss.
So capitalism is where you don't have a boss. Okay, see, I would have thought that capitalism is where most people, something that those of us who finished kindergarten and actually learned more than just like what happens in kindergarten, would call the working class, the proletariat, are stuck having bosses. Because the only way to not have a boss of some kind or other is if you've got so much money that you can just live off of the proceeds of owning it. But okay, go ahead.
Unemployed capitalism of people going out and being creative and starting their own business and innovating.
Except it's generally not the people who have the business who are doing the innovating. It's usually the people working for them. Is the thing.
The only place that you will find that in the world today,
as opposed to outside of the world,
is in socialist countries.
Wow, he just accidentally. What he's just doing a state cap. I see. I thought he was about to say we're in corporatism, and no, he didn't. Instead, he's saying the Marxist-Leninist countries aren't really socialist. They're actually capitalist, but actually that's good.
The place that capitalism, as many Americans understand it, is really in existence is China, Russia, Vietnam.
Well, yeah, Russia isn't Russia doesn't even claim to be a socialist country.
Nicaragua. The place that you will find the flourishing capitalism of entrepreneurship, people working hard, people having their own ideas.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that those are separate categories. You have the entrepreneurship, and then you have the people who are working hard and having ideas.
And the employer are, the workers are the employers. They are the owners of the business. And in fact, I believe there's over 5,000.
Okay, do the people who are watching this live, do they not realize that he's been slagging off the idea of, like, worker co-ops in capitalism? I mean, not wrongly. I mean, what was wrong about what he said is this idea that that's what, all of the amorphous blob that is BreadTube wants. I mean, that's what's wrong about that. But now, but now that is the pinnacle of socialist achievement
that have been started by
Deutschland, über alles, Deutschland über
Okay, first of all, why is he singing this? I mean, he's just doing this so that people will clip him doing this. But also, that's not how the fucking song goes. The second line is not, it does not have Deutschland again. It says, über alles in der Welt.
Deutschland 48 German Revolution. Do people know what it was?
I love this. Watch the guy. Watch this guy.
Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Deutschland, über all das Welt.
Deutschland über all das Welt. What? What the hell was that? I mean, the accent is the least of it. That doesn't, just syntactically, that makes no fucking sense. I mean, you could, suggest, if you were really trying to find an interpretation that is coherent, it means Germany above everything that makes waves. 2 L's in Welt rather than 1. But, I just love the dude walks right out as he starts to say. I mean, that's the headline of this, I think. Audience member walks out as Caleb Maupin starts singing Deutschland, Deutschland über alles.
Doesn't have the right to fight against Hamas, but they don't have the right to bomb children's hospitals. That is what I'm saying.
Wait, what did he just say?
It's Hamas, but they don't have... I'm not saying that Israel doesn't have the right to fight against Hamas, but...
I mean, the International Court of Justice said that. You even did a fucking stream on it, Xanderhal, so I feel like you should probably know that. They literally do not have a right to fight against the Palestinian resistance, because the Palestinian resistance has a right to resist occupation. They have a right to use force to do it, and they have a right to receive support from whoever is providing it in order to do that. They literally do not have a right to fight against the Palestinian resistance.
But they don't have the right to bomb children's hospitals. That is what I'm saying. Despite that, though, and the fact that Biden has been one of the most aggressive people in the world of politics fighting for a ceasefire...
No, he fucking hasn't. Most aggressive? He literally could stop this shit with a phone call. Still could. He could, he could unilaterally, he has it within his power to cut off the arms sales. He has not done that. Instead, he's had this bullshit, because in February, after months of seeing polls showing that the official, anti-ceasefire stance of the White House was about as popular as, a dog shit flavored birthday cake, they decided to pretend to be for a ceasefire, but not in any meaningful way. Because what everybody was demanding who was demanding a ceasefire was that the U.S. use the leverage, the enormous leverage the U.S. has, since Israel does not have an air force without the U.S., and force Israel to stop, cut off their weapons. Like Reagan did in 1982, where he just called Begin up, said it stops now, and within a literal half an hour, it was over. And Reagan is quoted in a biography as saying that he didn't realize he had that kind of power, but everybody who comes after him certainly fucking knew, because Israel is totally dependent on the U.S. and has become more dependent on the U.S. with every passing month. So, aggressively for a ceasefire, he has he's been one of the main obstacles to one.
He's just a psychotic, murderous freakazoid who wants to genocide Palestinians.
Well, what does that make the guy who's sending him all the weapons he needs and breaking every fucking record for U.S. arms supplies?
Would be ideal for the Palestinian people. They just say, well, if the U.S. doesn't just bomb Israel tomorrow or drop all support for them...
Nobody says bomb Israel tomorrow because everybody knows this could be finished without firing a single shot. This, in fact, could have been prevented without firing a single shot. If Biden had said, like, all the way back last October, had got on the phone to Netanyahu and said, look, I've heard what you've been saying about Amalek. I've heard what your defense minister has been saying about starving everybody in Gaza to death. And what I want you to know is if you're going to do that, you're going to be on your fucking own. That wouldn't have happened. Gaza would be standing right now. Nobody would be starving there. And the thing is, over a year into this genocide, that he still has that power. Like, even with 2 months in, Israel is dropping these bombs faster than the U.S., like nearly as fast as the U.S. can supply them. If he were suddenly told there aren't any more coming, that, you know, maybe Trump will resume the supply, but for now, he's fucked. 2 months is a long time if you're committing a genocide now you don't have air support. That is a very long time. I remember hearing from a lot of people, not wrongly, I should be clear, I agree with this take, that part of the reason that fascism is not acceptable is that it does genocide quite regularly. Well, Biden has been doing genocide for over a year now. And this motherfucker has been carrying his water. This motherfucker, like, I hope he is in the accountability archive for this. And if he isn't, that's at Archive Genocide on Twitter. This motherfucker absolutely deserves it, because this is somebody who is using his sort of leftish, liberal, ex-Nazi fucking platform as an influencer to obfuscate the responsibility of this regime for genocide, to obfuscate whether it was a genocide in the first place, and then to and to just convince people, to convince his supporters, his viewers, that there was nothing that could be done about it. I mean, he absolutely deserves it. Like, this motherfucker deserves his name written in shit all over fucking Palestine for this. Yeah, I mean, he's a small influencer, but 88,000 odd people. I mean, very odd people, I must say. Wait, oh no, 95.4 thousand odd people is still a fair number of people. Like, and anyone who's using their platform to do this really needs to be remembered for it, no matter what else they fucking did.
Or would they not show up, or would they somehow, God forbid, vote for Trump, who has outright promised to level Gaza and his son?
Level what in Gaza? Gaza's leveled. Have you seen fucking pictures? Have you seen what Gaza looks like? Xanderhal, have you paid any attention at all when you're talking about this to 95,000 people who inexplicably care about your opinion? Gaza's leveled. I mean, if you look at pictures of, like, Berlin after 1945 or Dresden after the war, Gaza looks worse. And that's saying something. Like, it's I mean, we have very hard numbers on this. The overwhelming majority of the housing, all the infrastructure, everything is wrecked. He can't level what's already wrecked. What's he gonna do? Like, fucking toss the rubble around?
Dearborn, Michigan. In fact, many of them bled into supporting Trump, the guy who promised to do even more damage. And now there is a massive protest, apparently. Palestinians are protesting the results. But statistically, they didn't come out and vote.
Fuck you. Man, this is what happens. I mean, this guy, the first video of his we ever looked at on this stream a while back, I think some of you were here for it. If not, you can go back. He was talking about why, when ex-Nazis show up in left spaces, we should not subject to them to any scrutiny at all. And this is, you can see why he feels that way. You can see why he feels that suits him as a position. And you can see, just looking at the shit he's saying, why it's a bad idea.
Understand that. It's a very emotional thing, right? Like, I've seen the same images and videos that you've seen that have made me quite upset too. But despite
Well, yeah, I mean, they've made him quite upset. You can really hear that. Like, some of us who have been paying close attention to this the whole time will never be the fucking same. Because it has been traumatic on a level that I don't think any of us were actually prepared for. Even those of us who have spent our lives studying the worst shit in modern history. Like, I mean, I spent my life studying, like, atrocities to try to understand how they happen, you know, what to do about them. And eventually I came to the conclusion that maybe capitalism was a bit of a cringe idea. And I still, like, am utterly traumatized by what I'm seeing. And, but this guy, I mean, he's just sitting here, yeah, I know, all this murdered children, it's a real buzzkill, but you gotta understand, sometimes you gotta support the person doing that. Like, fuck you, man.
Or Biden before that even, by the way. Yeah. Finally. I love that we're finally, like, everybody who has been dealing with this shit, like, for the last 4 years is finally coming out and saying, yeah, this has been bullshit. We need to start excising people who are not willing to get on board with our candidate. Like, when we...
I think you'll find that you're not the ones doing the excising at this point.
So much of our, like, online movement that are unwilling to even support the candidate that is going against the conservative one, these people need to be excised. This is unacceptable.
This is so funny because if you remember, again, this guy says if somebody says, I used to be a Nazi and now I want to be in your group, that he should just be embraced uncritically. And that anyone who feels any hesitance about that, anyone who wants to see if they're for real and wants to, like, you know, has any distrust, that they're the problem. But on the other hand, if you don't back whatever asshole the Democrats, like, put in front of people, no matter how unpopular they are, no matter if they're, like, literally committing genocide, which it used to be that was a thing that we all seemed to agree was something that there was never any excuse for, then, like, what the fuck even are you?
You don't get to separate yourself from that. You don't get to say vote for Harris the last second after years of calling them genociders and encouraging countless people to say they'll never vote for Harris because of what's happening.
Okay, but he's encouraging them to vote. Which is it? Are you saying that he specifically told people to vote for Harris, which it sounds like he's admitting, or are you saying he encouraged them never to do so? What he seems to be saying is that by pointing out things that suck about, you know, Biden and Harris, which is not hard to do, and it's insulting people, and I mean, the stuff is well known as well a lot of the time. It would be insulting people's intelligence to pretend that there wasn't this stuff. That's the same thing. It's not enough to say, you know, hold your nose and vote for the lesser evil. You also have to lie to people. Is that what he's saying the line is?
Happening in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, and then say, well, he did tell them to vote for Harris one time at the last second. It's like, no, you don't get to, like, I have been calling out that Harris and Biden are genociders shit for years now. You are not.
You know you haven't, because it hasn't been going on for years. You know when it started, Xanderhal? When they started committing genocide. Like, what is this for years bullshit? Is anybody going to call that out in chat? Because that is just such nonsense.
And we're
Deutschland, über alles, Deutschland über.
Okay, first of all, why is he singing this? I mean, he's just doing this so that people will clip him doing this. But also, that's not how the fucking song goes. The second line is not, it does not have Deutschland again. It says über alles in der Welt.
Deutschland, 48 German Revolution. Do people know what it was?
I love this. Watch the guy. Watch this guy.
Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Deutschland, über all das Welt.
Deutschland über all das Welt. What? What the hell was that? I mean, the accent is the least of it. That doesn't, it just syntactically, that makes no fucking sense. I mean, you could, like, suggest, if you were really trying to find an interpretation that is coherent, it means Germany above everything that makes waves. 2 L's in vote rather than 1. But, like, I just love the dude walks right out as he starts to say. I mean, that's the headline of this, I think. Audience member walks out as Caleb Maupin starts singing Deutschland, Deutschland über